suits him. Do not write him off. Hikaru will have his hands full.
It's experience versus explosiveness. Yesterday, you know, we got so much drama, action. We had the trash talk, the comebacks, the Armageddons. I'm expecting more of that today. This is going to be a lot of fun. Hikaru Nakamura, he is one of the fastest brains on earth. Arjun Erigaisi, one of the hungriest on earth. This is going to be amazing.
We have a situation where both of these players have had setbacks in the tournament, but they have so much respect for each other as well. You heard in Hikaru's interview, okay, they might be the three favorites and Arjun's the outsider here, but Hikaru himself said it's not because he can't perform at this level, it's because maybe he's a little bit less consistent than the others, but over time he's only going to get more consistent, he's only going to increase that level, and on his day, he can beat any one of those three.
Exactly, still young, Arjun Erigaisi, just 22 years old, and the experience of this event is going to stand him in such good stead in the future. Look at that, he was staring off at the trophy, wondering whether it will be his someday, but for now, it's all about those club championship points. He's got to do one for his team. We should remind everyone, Team Falcons, they are going to bank the points that Alireza is going to score in the final, whether he wins or loses that one later. But for Hikaru, still a lot of pride on the line.
Yeah, the fight for third and the championship battle later, both generational clashes here. You know, Hikaru Nakamura, world number 2, Arjun Erigaisi, world number 5. And for Arjun, it's been a meteoric rise in the chess world over the last year and a half, while Hikaru's been dominant at the very top for over a decade. And the reasons are pretty clear. This is going to be a battle on the board, one of speed, accuracy, thrills, all of that. And look at the opening that we have already. A lot of trades in the center. Liquidated completely here, and the queen moves away.
Yeah, it was a double Queen's Gambit, just as Magnus essayed yesterday in his first game against Magnus Carlsen. That ended in defeat, but Hikaru goes back to one of his favorite openings a bit earlier. The Queen's Gambit, white offering a pawn, met by black offering a pawn, and ultimately the whole of the D and C files have opened up. Nice development here for the white pieces. White's bishop hitting a black knight, threatening to double some pawns. Hikaru will most likely react to that. This has a reputation of being slightly easier to handle with white, but Hikaru, he is the leading expert in this system for black.
And there's an argument to say that this might actually be the fastest start we've seen at the Esports World Cup so far. By the time we got to 1 minute used by both players, we were comfortably on move 10. Moves have been played very quickly before, but this is the fastest we've stormed out of the gates, just trying to get to the middle game as quickly as possible.
And the reason that white often does better here, even though it looks completely symmetrical, you feel like there have been too many trades to start off with, is that everything comes on with a tempo. The pieces flow easier, the rook lined up against the black queen, the bishop and the queen now setting up a battery on that light square diagonal, eyeing the 8-7 pawn, with already threats of bishop takes knight, and very often black has to be the one making those defensive moves earlier on. Also having a bit of a problem in developing his own light squared bishop. Hikaru Nakamura will find a way. He looks pretty confident. Has used a little bit of a clock, but the bishop eventually does come out, now aiming at bringing the rook to the central file.
Already given a question mark though, Hikaru Nakamura's last move. I'm going to say the most natural human move in the position. This is the obvious home for black's light squared bishop, but it is within striking distance. One reason here is that Arjun could do what he's doing. He could trade off bishops, land a knight. He gets there before I do. He's attacking black's light squared bishop now with that knight. You cannot allow a trade on this square if you're Hikaru Nakamura. You cannot at least allow it to happen when you have to take back with the pawn. That would ruin your structure, give you no light squared bind. He protects it with his rook instead, but look at the eval bar, hating what Hikaru's doing.
Not liking it at all, and Hikaru spent more than 10 seconds on 5 moves in a row from move 8 onwards, and that's when his position started to deteriorate as well. So maybe that was the point where maybe he thought the game was going to go in a slightly different direction and he was thinking more on his feet. The only move he's played quickly recently is the recapture on f6.
And that was a forcing move. Right now, it's not only one knight of Arjun that's going to step forward, but the other one as well, targeting the bishop on the dark squares. And when that lands at the center of the board, knight e4, always a move to look out for. Queen c2, once again creating that battery. Just feels like the kind of position that Arjun will enjoy playing. It has the makings of all those tricks and tactics on the right side of the board. When you know you've got the knight pair, something that Vachier-Lagrave really loves. He's always a supporter of the knights over bishop, and I think Arjun, inspired by that, means tactics on the board.
Yeah, all these Indian players, this new generation inspired by Vichy in some way or other, liking his knights here. Arjun, the big question is whether to trade off his knight for Black's light squared bishop. Either way, this opening from Hikaru, it feels like he's just trying to equalize. It's gone a bit wrong. Black is in a bit of trouble, but he's just trying to make a symmetrical pawn structure, trying to guide the game towards a draw. I want to see the Hikaru of the latter half of that match against Magnus when he was playing the King's Indian fence, going aggressive.
But I think this also makes sense, right? Because Hikaru going for the King's Indian defense, which worked to perfection against Magnus, was the style he needed against the player he was playing. He very well knows Arjun. I think his strategy today is going to be to try to get those positional strategic angles in the game, somewhere where he's seen Arjun struggle. So trying to avoid those aggressive, combative play might be something that's part of the plan for Hikaru.
Maybe, but it doesn't look like his position is very pleasant right now. He shuffles his queen across, asking for a trade. Will Arjun oblige? Will he keep the tension? A lot of options, extra minute on the clock. Arjun's heart rate back down to a very normal rate, born in a refrigerator, as they were saying. And Hikaru definitely feeling the pressure early doors.
And now there's a couple of options, of course. Arjun could bring his other knight into e4 and hit both bishops and say, okay, or he could just take the light squared bishop here. Maybe there's a couple of third options as well, but I would imagine hitting the minor pieces, giving maximum flexibility is useful. Does he eventually want to take the bishops off in this position?
I think he does, but this is a move I was expecting from Arjun simply because he likes to keep the tension on the board. He didn't want to rush with it, and that response was not what I was expecting on the board. The bishop came from there. It would make a lot of sense if Hikaru had the time to develop that queenside rook to the center file and then retreat. But he just voluntarily disconnected the two rooks. This looks quite unnatural.
Yeah, very odd. It just smells bad, Hikaru's last few moves, losing time with his pieces, and Arjun says, you go back, I go forward. The white queen steps to a very, very nice square, pressuring Black's dark squared bishop, which is kind of caught in a bind, can barely move. Black's pieces all tied up in knots. This is a dream start for Arjun. Okay, the bishop does in the end shift, still defended by the black queen, but it still needs a move or two to get to safety.
This is just beautiful, right? Look at each and every piece that Arjun has, everything playing at the center of the board. And usually when you're able to capture central squares and place them the way Arjun has, you can direct play on either side. And that's why the center in chess is so incredibly important, so that you can decide to get to the right flank or the left flank depending on where the weaknesses are. He could also think about improving the diagonal of his light squared bishop. A lot of tender spots to target to. This is a beautiful start. And look at that, tactics on the board by Arjun.
Yeah, let's delve into this one. That white knight jumping forward, very, very ambitious. It was a trick that Hikaru Nakamura dodged. And if we just rewind action replay on our green analysis board here, the white knight dropping into d6, hitting the black rook. If it had been taken, it looks free, but it is poisoned. Bishop takes h7, check. Getting out the way, and look at this, the white rook suddenly pounces on the d-file, hitting the black queen. It's all about the d-file, and right now, the two white knights sitting pretty, hitting the black rook, hitting the black bishop. One of them has moved, but the f7 square we're highlighting there also very vulnerable to white's army. All of the white's pieces are flooding forward. Hikaru here barely holding the barricades. This looks beautiful for white.
And I think you try to keep that pawn defended. Hikaru moves his rook back to f8. When a player has to put that bishop, which has just moved to e6, all the way back to its starting square, when the castled rook comes back to that position on f8, you know that the opening's gone completely wrong for you.
Right. Well, let's have a positional question about this opening that I'm quite keen to hear the answer to. The theme of the last 5, 6, 7 moves, lots of knights moving, lots of bishops moving out of the way. Arjun Erigaisi continuing to try and ratchet up the pressure on the board. How do you tell when it's too much? We sometimes speak of chess players overpressing their position or keeping the tension on the board too long. How is it possible to tell when the right moment to strike is? Because that must be such a delicate balance.
It is hard. Normally that's where you need to back it up with calculation, looking into the future, starting with those forcing moves, the checks, the captures, and the threats. Normally there's also a bit of a trigger, and the trigger here could be the fact that black has lost so much time. The bishop, the light square bishop on c8 has moved twice, only to go back home. The black rook on f8. If you count castling, it's moved 3 times, went to e8, back. The black bishop on h6 has moved 4 times. The black queen has moved 4 times. The black knight has retreated back. So all of these things adding up, your opponent retreating, that normally is a signal you go forward, you can cash in some way or other.
It almost starts feeling like Hikaru is setting up the board for the next game. Everything retreating to the first rank. You look at him, and that's all you need to know about this position. And meanwhile, Arjun just continues to improve, gain more space, solidify more pieces on the board already on beautiful squares. I mean, this position is a dream one with the white pieces for Arjun, playing a player like Hikaru, completely dominating the board, all sides.
The outposts here for the knights are really strong as well, because either of the knights can jump back to e4 as well and continue to move towards the king side. You can't play f5 because it's pinned by the bishop, which leads me to think it's weird thinking king h8 might be an active move here, but is freeing up that side of the board the plan for Hikaru to release himself from this bind?
He has to find a way. You're completely right. So one idea could be to do it on the right flank, but I think the last move by Hikaru sort of hints at how he's trying to achieve that. He's just moved the rook away from the white queen's eye line and wanted to push the b pawn forward to b6 to kick out the white knight. Now, I think, speaking about when is the trigger that you need to go concrete, that was it. Arjun maximized his pieces, got the trade in, and we're seeing a forcing sequence of moves playing out here.
Yeah, and I was going to say the bigger shock to me is that Hikaru wasn't making any faces, he wasn't shaking his head, but it has started to begin. He kind of winced as he offered that queen trade. Look at Black's pawn structure now, doubled f-pawns, that is not a nice sight there. Black's bishop very offside, just staring at a brick wall. In the meantime, if Arjun wants, he can get hungry here, he can trade off knights by winning a pawn, and there we go, the whole of the black queen side is about to disappear. Hikaru's got some tricks up his sleeve, potentially. I'm really shocked that he's not making faces, though, Tanya. He is dead lost. He's busted, but he's not reacting.
Yeah, usually by now you see all those trademark Hikaru head shakes and where he's really... And there it is. At least a slight one, where he's furious with himself. But I think there's this realization that this has gone absolutely disastrous, wrong from the start. Something that we saw in Game 1 against Magnus as well. In fact, it's gone so wrong that Arjun doesn't need to rush with capturing that second pawn. He instead starts to improve the position of the king because that queen side isn't going anywhere. What Arjun wants to do is get his king closer to the white rook so that he's able to unpin the bishop.
Now, the clock situation may or may not come into play here. It's 4 minutes versus 5.5, so it is worth pointing out that Hikaru Nakamura has got more time on the clock. That said, if this position is bust, it means it's a little bit easier. As long as you can see the plan through to the finish line, you can start playing really quickly. So that 1.5-minute advantage, it means a lot if it's 30 seconds versus 2 minutes. Maybe not so much if both players still have more than 3 minutes.
And Arjun is very fast. He doesn't like to be lower on the clock. Arjun, he normally tries to use the clock as a big weapon. So, yeah, for now, I think it's okay. But if he does get to around the 1.5-minute mark, we saw it against Firouzja in his semi-final. He can crack under that pressure. Here, Hikaru is setting up tricks. He wants to line up both of the black rooks on the c-file. This is Black's next move, pretty much no matter what, unless he's forced to take a timeout. So Arjun needs a solution. He needs to get his bishop out of dodge here. He needs to protect it somehow, or he needs to push his pawns and hope. There we go. He attacks the black rook. We see Black slide across and the white pawn's marching. 2 squares from touchdown.
Arjun's calculated his way all the way through. The black rook comes to defense. But look at that bishop. That extra bishop that Hikaru has is so far away from defense. And Arjun just 2 moves away from getting that A pawn to support the B pawn. A5, A6, rook A8, B8 queen. Game over. That's his plan. And I think Hikaru Nakamura is completely helpless against it. This is the first time in my life that I have seen Arjun's heart rate cross 100. That's never happened. This guy doesn't move beyond the 66 mark. That's the golden spot for him. This tournament, we've often seen him spike that. Just goes on to show how much this means for both players. For Hikaru, over 100, and there we have it, mirroring each other now. But this is big. A third place fight, but everything on the line for their teams.
Arjun goes to the gym. Heart rate can't get above 100. Personal trainer doesn't understand medical science, wants to study this. It turns out all he needs is a good position over the board and a conversion potentially for 500 club points and $145,000. I'll tell you what, that would get my heart rate up.
Wow, and he's dropping by the second. Arjun down to around 80 now. But that's because he's calmly realizing he's about to win. The underdog in this match, Arjun Erigaisi, he takes the point. Hikaru resigns.
Hikaru Nakamura resigns. Sustained pressure. Amazing knights over bishops in the middle game there. Arjun Erigaisi takes the lead in this third place match. potentially critical for Gen G, but also it's very early days. A reminder to everyone watching at home, this is not a best of 4, it is a best of 6, but it is Arjun Erigaisi who draws first blood.
It almost felt like Hikaru went on self-destruct mode in that game with the black pieces. You know, from the very start, sort of retreating move by move, wasting so much time on the clock. And Arjun, every single play by him was an improvement move, and then just finished the game off in a forcing sequence, sacrificed it, and it was the first threat that was being set up here. And this moment, Arjun gave up the bishop, the pawns, just too strong, nothing to be done by Hikaru in this one.
Yeah, he ended up resigning Hikaru because the black bishop is too far away, the black king is too far away, white's A and B pawns would have stormed forward to promotion. You said, Tanya, that you'd never seen Arjun's heart rate rise over 100. I've never seen Hikaru react so calmly to what was a pretty disastrous game. He was never in it, Hikaru Nakamura. He cannot repeat that opening. He lost against Magnus in this double Queen's Gambit. He lost against Arjun here, both without chances.
It's really hard to read into that, isn't it? Because, yeah, Hikaru is such an emotional player over the board. He wears his heart on his sleeve. You always know what he's feeling. And he was, I think it's fair to say, unusually stoic as the position began to deteriorate there. Maybe he does need to let the emotion out to give his chess the best chance to flourish, I don't know. But at the same time, Arjun Erigaisi, Hikaru said, can he keep that consistent? That's just made this third place match really, really interesting.
It's fascinating. I think the big question here is, how much did Hikaru Nakamura's fight against Magnus yesterday take away from him? How much that drained him? Because that was an epic, epic battle. I think one of the best that I've seen. It reminded me of that 2020 clash in the Magnus Carlsen Invitational, in some of the Speed Chess Championship, and Hikaru he just sort of gave it his all. Does he have the energy to take on a player like Arjun Erigaisi, who always brings the fight to you? Will he be able to withstand and put out his best against Arjun is the big question. I think this game 2 will tell us all we need to know about that.
Hikaru Nakamura now starting with the white pieces. Arjun had the opportunity to seize the initiative, and to be fair, he ran with it in game number 1. However, Hikaru is more than capable of doing this in high-pressure situations, and we are looking forward now to seeing how he chooses to come out of the opening in game 2.
And Hikaru starting with the Queen's Gambit, met by a Slav defense. Now both sides fianchetto their bishops. It's a bit of a hybrid opening, this one, as Hikaru jumps forward with a knight. White has small hopes of an advantage, although black is rock solid here, due to the fact that white holds the key to the center. There's some tension. The white c4 pawn, though, unlikely to be captured anytime soon. It might do the capturing itself. And this is known to be very kind of traditional, very classical for black. Maybe, again, playing against Arjun here, he's hoping to provoke Arjun, Hikaru Nakamura, as he trades off a set of pawns in the center. This is still mainline theory, but who knows their openings better, who's done their better homework? That is the key question here.
And for Hikaru, it's so important to sort of just keep the game going and maybe not create that chaos himself, because he knows, Arjun will find a way to create chances for both players. So he doesn't need to rush into any complications, and that's why we see this very symmetrical pawn structure at the center of the board. Now a trade and a decision for Hikaru. If he takes with the pawn, that would be ambitious, but create some weaknesses of his own long term. Doesn't feel like the connect four anyone wants on the board, but he does go for it. And David, you're as surprised as I am.
Yeah, this move given a question mark, and in and of itself it looks fine, but if you compare the bishops now, I'm looking at black's dark squared bishop with a lot of potential on the diagonal, especially if that line ever opens up. I'm meanwhile looking at the white bishop blocked. A quick comparison shows that trading those bishops, picking them both off the board here and now, imagine them both disappearing, that would improve Hikaru's chances so much, and he could have had that. Not only that, but I've actually looked at this myself, and this is not a pleasant position for white. I just don't understand what he's trying to do. He's doubled his own pawns, locked in his own bishop, Hikaru Nakamura.
So far in this match, it doesn't feel like Hikaru Nakamura. It feels like a completely different player from yesterday. We're talking about what we have in front of us right now. One of the key plans for white in this position is to go e4 and try to sort out the problem of the two double pawns on that central file. Also aim at opening up your bishop. But that can always be met by Arjun pushing his d pawn forward. d4, you deny those trades, you deny those open lines, and you're the one with the passer. So you're basically essentially just stuck with two bad bishops voluntarily in this position if you're Hikaru.
Maybe we have a situation, we've seen it a couple of times in the Esports World Cup. I wonder to what extent Hikaru is playing the scoreboard situation. Because you're right, Tanya, he doesn't have to bring the chaos. He doesn't have to deviate. But at the same time, there's always a voice in the back of your head after you've lost a game to say, well, if I just chill out and every game is a draw from here on out, I lose the match. And that voice is always nagging at you to do something. And it's very difficult to ignore it.
And in the meantime, we've seen a couple of quick moves. Arjun is going for white's doubled e-pawns. They don't make a great impression, but Hikaru has got his bad bishop out of the way now. The bishop that we highlighted a moment ago, he's attacking the black queen. And when the black queen moves, he will most likely start throwing pawns forward. The white f-pawn, it feels desperate here. Black's d-pawn is super strong in the meantime. Look at that, Hikaru exhaling. He knows it's gone wrong early days.
This looks like the kind of pawn structure and the pawn pushing that you would expect if they had castled on opposite sides of the board. If you hid the back rank from me and you asked me which side did white castle, I think I might have been tempted to say queen side. This is absolutely, how do I put it, relentless from Hikaru right now. He's very, very committed to this. There's no going back.
It's relentless, but also feels a bit desperate and a bit premature and a bit wrong. You know, I'm not sure when you haven't developed your left side of the board, your knight and rook, your bishop's still trapped. And look at that, Arjun, he does push the bishop. He captures upon the speed with which he's played right now, and that's why an inaccuracy on the board. I don't know why Arjun just rushed through that sequence. There was absolutely no need to do that. He's now threatening to take the bishop on f6, but certain missed opportunities for black in the last few moves.
Yeah, I think there were several tempting options. Arjun saw something he deems to be good, so he didn't hesitate. And there we go. Hikaru doesn't pause for too long either. Hikaru spending only 20 seconds before deciding to trade off those bishops, but he could have traded them off, 8 moves ago now. He spent a lot of time with his bishop. White is a pawn down. We should mention the black queen has grabbed a pawn on b2. Not just one pawn down, you've got double pawns of your own. He has to go for checkmate, Hikaru. He's all in. He's got to go for the black king. That is not going to be easy. You can push pawns, but you don't have any many attacking pieces yourself. And Arjun, if he defends this well, is a favorite now.
Yeah, it almost feels like 1.5 pawns up for Arjun with the pawn formation that Hikaru has. And the queen and the knight that white has is just a little bit too far away from the black king. Meanwhile, for Arjun, you know, there are direct plans. He wants to fan-cato his bishop, opens up the way to get there. The black knight about to jump to the center of the board. And look at that d3 pawn.
I will say one thing, though.
Worth more than a pawn.
I will say one thing. The knight on d2 has the potential to jump into c4 with tempo. And once it's on d6, it's rather difficult to dislodge. So if white can find a way to get more than just the knight into the attack, I can see this being really, really dangerous. But I'm sat here thinking, where's the second piece? Where's that coming from? And that's where I'm struggling. The queen on g4 doesn't actually do much, not yet. So what's the follow-up that makes this attack have real bite? And I think that's the problem that Hikaru Nakamura is trying to solve right now.
Yep, he has some time at least to try and solve that. Slightly ahead on the clock, but he definitely needs to activate the white pieces. You always need some kind of compensation, whether it is an attack or beautiful outposts or pawns that are looking very dangerous if you have made a sacrifice like Hikaru here. And the last few moves, we've seen inaccuracies from both players. I think that's going to continue. It's that type of position, very irrational, the pawn structure. It's one that they won't have seen before, this type of scenario. So Hikaru pausing now, burned away his time advantage, a shake of the head, but still, he's not out of it. The eval bar even says it's level after all of those adventures.
That's the most non-human evaluation of this position. You know, the evaluation bar gives it because simply the computer can find the best move after a best move. But in these kind of dynamic play where it's an absolute mess on the board, you know, there's no direct path. There are so many options and it's really hard to calculate and try doing that. Good luck doing that with 6 minutes on the clock. Every move is a high responsibility move here. You're down a pawn, black's pawn is on d3, your pieces are behind, Arjun's potentially threatening to offer a queen trade, I was about to say from c2, which has just been stopped with the last move, rooks to c1, attacking the black knight. I'm expecting Arjun to jump forward with that knight to either b4 or d4, creating threats of his own. This is a crazy position. 6 minutes on the clock. Lots of mistakes are going to happen, and I think we're going to see the bars swing up and down quite a bit in this game.
Yeah, there's, both sides have potential for swinging their knights forward right now. Obviously, knight c4 can potentially be met with gobbling a rook, but we're not going to even think about that because the black knight jumps into d4 first. If you're not going to jump, I'm going to go first. And seizing the initiative here is Erigaisi.
And I think for Arjun, the point is that your move, trying to plant the knight on d6, is just such an attractive thing to do. While knight c4, it also comes in with a tempo. Hikaru doesn't care about the pawn. And now you can finally see the frustration playing out on Hikaru. You know, he's reacting to what's happened, not just in the first game, but how is it that after the opening, in both these games, I'm in so much trouble?
Right.
After knight c4, Arjun does have the resource of offering a queen trade via e2. If the queens are off the board, Arjun's a happy man.
Yeah, and that's not a statement we normally make, but it is because he is a pawn up, better structure as well, Arjun Erigaisi. It's the style of position. It is a bit chaotic, it is a bit unorthodox, and that's normally what Arjun likes. Hikaru likes it when it's a bit more about maneuvering, a bit more stable, solid foundations, and that's why he now is burning time on his clock. Under the 5-minute mark in a second, Hikaru just not in the flow yet today. He always perks up, he always wakes up eventually. Consistency is his middle name these days, Hikaru Nakamura, but this hasn't been a great start to the third place playoff for him. He needs to move. There we go, the most obvious move in the position, and now Tanya's idea of the queen trade offered. At least White has one beautiful knight now to work around.
So here, queen trade offered declined, we should point out. So Nakamura may be wanting to have the trade on his own terms, not wanting the knight to invade into that position, definitely not with tempo as well. The queen on e2 also prevents the white queen from getting to g4 or just generally moving to that side of the board. So it'll be interesting to see how the players choose to respond, because there's no easy alternative way to get rid of that queen that doesn't involve exchanging.
It's very difficult to do that. You know, with the knight at the center of the board, not so many squares for Hikaru's queen to run to. How long can he allow Arjun's queen to stay on that spot, which is not only offering a trade, but pins the white bishop on g2, creating some ideas. Imagine that black knight landing on e3 via c2 someday, and that's game over on the spot. So things to worry about if you try to escape with your queen, deny the trade. But right now, Arjun's got some questions to answer. Does he keep the bishop where it is? Does he develop it to a6, deny the trade, allowing Hikaru potentially to come in with the rook to the 7th rank?
Yeah, big moments, big calculation needed. Arjun, he wants to develop his bishop. The white queen could also come out to a4 though, hitting any bishop on a6, hitting the black knight in the center. Hikaru looks so fascinated by this position suddenly, wide-eyed, and it's not even his move. He's getting excited about something here, Hikaru Nakamura. Maybe starting to realize that it is still a position full, rich, and full of possibilities here.
The position's completely nuts, right? From a human perspective here. You see so many ideas, so many threats, so many tactics and tricks in this. Again, every move could just be completely lost for either side. You know, you play bishop a6, you better be sure you have a response to queen a4 coming in with a double attack. You go queen takes queen, thank you very much. Pawn takes queen, I'm hitting your rook. Super happy to get that pawn on the 7th rank. How are you going to respond to this? And I think Hikaru totally locked in, zoned in, and wow, he does go for that idea. The queen hitting the black knight and the bishop. Arjun, he sensed something in this position. Tactics incoming.
And our audience there in the arena looks fascinated. They must be looking for ways to stop the white queen winning a piece. Hikaru looks very calm right now. It's a double attack. The white queen hitting the black knight, hitting the black bishop, and at least according to our engines here in our studio, only one move for Arjun to maintain his advantage. It's not an easy one either, and he will need to be very creative. Let's just show the white queen was attacking the black knight, and the black knight actually jumped, but the black bishop is up for grabs now. Queen takes bishop will allow the knight into e3, threatening checkmate, hitting the white rook as well. The black queen trying to grab on g2, and if the white rook moves, we might see some cool tactics. Knight takes bishop, rook takes knight, and check this out, a full queen sacrifice, pawn to d2, bang! And look at the tension between the queens now. The white queen hit, the black queen could be captured twice, but if she is taken, a new queen is born, winning the white rook in the process, and when the dust settles, rook for knight advantage, Arjun Erigaisi. That is incredible tactical vision.
That's very, very deep. And let's see if that ends up playing out. Knight c2 was played on the board. So let's see what happens next. Knight's actually gone up to g4 instead, so a bit of a deviation from what we saw.
This game's about to end. Arjun didn't take the bishop. Maybe he saw some ghosts there, maybe there were some issues, but he's about to force a draw with a repetition. The knight jumps, there's going to be a bunch of checks. This game is about to be over.
Arjun could have taken a 2-point lead in this match. He had that option. The line would have played out. Knight takes bishop, rook takes knight, and d2. He didn't spot it. And this is very unlike Arjun. Usually these kind of tactics is what he lives for. It's his breakfast, lunch, and dinner. He does them 100 times a day, but he just rushed through. And now we're going to see a knight jump back, the king move back, and there it is. It's going to be repetition. This one ends in a draw.
With the tactics on the board to keep the game going for a potential 2-0 lead, we instead get to a threefold repetition. So Arjun Erigaisi maintaining the lead in the match, 1.5 to a half. But a very dynamic way to end the game. And after all of that calculation to get to the point where the knight was on the 7th and we were ready to go, it's interesting that it was only the final blow. I say final blow, but it felt like a natural continuation at that point, didn't it?
Yeah, and our engine here says that Arjun would have only had a slight advantage, but to humanize it looks like a massive advantage. And I wonder whether there will be a reaction from Arjun Erigaisi. We saw him playing through the game, analyzing it with the computer, but ultimately he went for safety, maybe because he's a point up in the match, forcing a draw on the spot against Hikaru. But Arjun, he might live to regret missing that small opportunity.
I mean, with the black pieces, and the thing is that Arjun, he's not a bailout player. If he's got that chance on the board, he takes it. He tries to maximize it. You know, he's not somebody who goes for repetition. It was a blind spot. It's something that moved the pawn push. It's a hard move to see. You know, you're hanging your queen, it can be picked up by the rook or your opponent's queen, and you have to calculate quite a bit ahead. But had Arjun just paused for 30 seconds in that moment, I have no doubt that he would have spotted it.
We should also bear in mind as well that, admittedly, thanks to help from a computer evaluation, if it turns out that he would have had an advantage, but a relatively small one off the back of that, yes, the human look on that position looks like it's a really, really crushing continuation. But maybe Arjun has seen, oh, I have an advantage here, but it's still really double-edged. Do I maybe just take the draw as black? Maybe it was a conscious decision.
I think what happened there, David, was that Arjun had pre-decided this line in his mind. He had calculated his way through, seen that he's given up the bishop, seen this repetition, and just gone for it. And when it appeared on the board, he just didn't pause at that moment.
Right.
He still had 6 minutes almost when he decided to go for this whole variation and blitzing towards the end. It's definitely the match. He's playing the points. He's playing the fact that a draw with black is always a good result against Hikaru Nakamura.
Exactly. And objectively, if you're thinking, well, hang on a second, win with white, draw with black, if we continue down this path, I'm happy to do it all day long. It's up to Hikaru to find a response.
That's how they did it in the good old days, right? A very classical approach to chess, going for it with white, taking minimal risk and just being rock solid, locking it down with black.
I hear you guys, but had Arjun seen that line, had he spotted it, had he stopped for 30 seconds, he would have at least given a bit of a thought and made his decision. And I would not have been surprised if Arjun would have said game on. I think he was just predetermined on this path and just went for it. You know, he had calculated this entire sequence of moves and then just didn't stop at that right moment.
That'll be a moment potentially to ask about in maybe some interviews after the match, regardless of which way it goes. What was the end of game 2 like, and how much of that did Arjun Erigaisi see? For now, though, game number 3 very much on the board. We've been seeing a lot of d4, c4 in this tournament, and this game is no exception.
That's right. A Queen's Gambit declined this time, and we see the Carlsbad pawn structure. White with a nice pawn chain in the middle on dark squares, black with a corresponding pawn chain on light squares. And it's something that both players will be very, very familiar with. Some small nuances here. White's light squared bishop has not developed. And there we go. The path opens up, hitting black's bishop on f5 in the process. Hikaru pauses, but this is still well-known stuff. That bishop's going to retreat, and the game goes on. He's just trying to build that solid foundation we were talking about earlier, Hikaru, that he hasn't got so far in this match.
And the reason Hikaru retreats to this square is making sure that Arjun's knight does not jump to h5, attacking the g7 pawn. But what this move allows, and a move that Arjun loves to play regardless of the situation on the board or the mat situation, is the h-pawn moving forward. h4, h5 would be the dream, but it comes as a pawn sacrifice. And yes, there are pros to that. Giving up that pawn on h4 has ideas of his own, long-term compensation on that h-line, potential knight jumps. It needs to be calculated. And Arjun, he makes a more cautious move. Instead of h4, he goes h3. And that's very uncharacteristic of him.
Wow. Is that a mouse slip? I want to see Arjun's face now. He doesn't react. He looks very calm, but that is such a bizarre move. We see #1 fan for Arjun Erigaisi there out in the arena. Nice to see. Nice to see people taking sides, showing what tribe they belong to. But in the meantime, pawn to h3, that is bizarre. Very passive and doesn't really help White's position at all.
Do you want to talk us through a little bit about why pawn to h4 could have been interesting? Because to the untrained eye, pawn to h4, allowing that pawn to be taken, I get that there's activity associated with that, but without a white c-pawn on the board, what I'm naturally thinking when you do that is, are we really castling queenside into this?
Yeah, and let's show what could have happened if the pawn had pushed forward to a4, Arjun stopping 1 square short, the bishop could have captured, and now White's knight might just leap forward onto h5, hitting a pawn. This is very hard to defend now, and if there were a capture, the white queen would pounce, the black bishop forced to step back, and White would have a big potential attack. Yes, you're a pawn down, but the open h-file for the white rook, the activity of the queen, gives fantastic compensation. Black's king would be caught in the center for the rest of this game.
Last question on this position, though, David or Tanya. Where does the white king live after all this?
Well, you can't go to the right side of the board. The good news is queenside castling is always up for grabs here. And then you just slide the king over to b1 and you would be completely safe on this side. Not to mention the white rook eventually joining the attack as well.
Nice one.
And look at this. He plays the same idea, different order this time. He plays it without having sacrificed the white h-pawn. Makes a lot of sense. Now we see what Arjun has done. Pawn to h3 at least creates a home for the white dark squared bishop to retreat to, but still feels like he's kind of mixing and matching and indecisive here, Arjun Erigaisi. I don't hate it. I think that knight might just be captured anyway, but less attacking than it could have been.
If it was any other player, I wouldn't bring this question up, but h3, mouse slip or not?
I think so.
Yeah.
I'm inclined to think that as well. Because
he had no reaction, though, right? We were looking for something on his face, and
he's Mr. Cool Guy for a reason.
Yeah, that's true.
Doesn't give it away.
Heart rate went to 90. That's a small giveaway. It's dropping back down slightly here for Arjun. We saw a trade, knight for bishop, and now Hikaru offering a second bishop for knight trade, potentially, as he drops his bishop out to pin White's knight. Very interesting there, asking White's king a question.
Well, now we get to have one of our favorite topics of conversation, I think, on this commentator's desk, which is knights versus bishops. Having that bishop for knight trade, of course, means that Arjun Erigaisi is left with the bishops. But my mind can't help but think back to the earlier games when the knights absolutely dominated the bishops to give us the first point of the match. So are the bishop pair here, is that going to be helping Arjun?
I think that's a great question, and I think Hikaru knows that Arjun loves to play with knights. And the reason for that is every single attacking player on the planet prefers knights to bishops in a more general situation because they're just great attackers.
Yeah.
And of course, there are exceptions to the rule, depends on the position and all of that, but knights over bishop when it comes to your aggressive ability. And Arjun for now makes a retreating move, but to your point, I think it's possible, he also came in with an idea and a threat. It wasn't only to take Arjun's last remaining knight on the board, but Black's knight was about to jump to a4, doubling down on that pinned knight. So Arjun's mysterious queen retreat takes control of that knight a4 threat, which would have landed on the board, but now there's another knight jump. Knight to e4 instead, and Arjun uses the queen to defend the pinned knight.
Hikaru really doesn't like that knight on c3, does he? We get to see a knight into a4 as well.
We got to see a pre-move there by Arjun on his screen. He did put pawn takes bishop if it would have happened as a move right there. If Hikaru was to choose bishop takes knight, Arjun's ready with his response. It's not going to be queen takes bishop.
I've come to realize there's only 2 times when a safe move is 100% a safe move. A pre-move even is 100% safe, and that's when it's a capture, so you put your own piece onto another of your own pieces. That move would only ever happen if your opponent takes something, or if you've checked your opponent and they only have one legal response. You can play the next move as an immediate follow-up. Anything else comes with a little bit of risk, so that's why we see some red on Arjun Erigaisi's screen as he gets ready to play b takes c3. Pawn takes whatever lands on that square. Okay, let's choose a side. Which way is the black king going? What do we foresee in the future?
It's got to be kingside, right? You can do it now, nice and quick. You're applying a lot of pressure. White's not about to win a tempo against you. It's your agenda. Might as well do it in one, right?
To me, that makes a lot of sense. And also given the fact that Arjun has this beautiful bishop on f4. So if you ever went long castle with your king, you know, hiding to safety in the corner with b8, a8 will be incredibly difficult. So it just feels a lot safer on the king side there.
How about the white king? That was my follow-up question. What do you foresee?
You know, we're going to throw that back to you, David Howell.
Probably to the king side, to the right side.
I'm scared about the lack of a c-pawn. I get that the king can move to b1 and it becomes relatively safe, but when you have one less pawn, it just makes me a little bit iffy.
It's a bit trickier for me. I think, ooh,
wow.
What is going on with Hikaru Nakamura and retreating moves today? Why is he doing this? He's down on the clock, lost game, same narrative.
That is huge. And it might not look like it.
Well.
It's still a normal position, but his knight just came from f6, went to e4, went back immediately to f6. He gave Arjun 2 free moves. No chess professional wants to do that. And Arjun does go to the queenside after all.
Okay.
Wow, Arjun smelling weakness in Hikaru. Hikaru's down a full minute on the clock, clearly playing very, very tentatively here. And Arjun wants to strike.
And I think that's the key point. Arjun's not smelling weakness on the board, but more psychologically on Hikaru. Just the shakiness that he's shown, not only in game one, but the way he's approached the opening from here. How many times has that bishop moved? How many times has that knight moved? That's breaking every single opening preparation, opening principle in chess even. And look at that, another inaccuracy. He brings the queen out, and if Arjun decides to trade the bishop now, that queen would have moved multiple times as well.
Yeah, on his first 15 moves, Hikaru made 5 knight moves. He made 3 dark squared bishop moves, and what was it? 3 light squared bishop moves as well. It's all about the minor pieces for Hikaru. He does eventually get castled. He's lucky that the center is locked, that it's blocked, so he's got away with it. This loss of time, but it's bizarre seeing a world-class player show such indecision.
This has almost justified a little bit some of what Hikaru has done, because Tanya mentioned that brilliant bishop on f4 makes it a little bit dicey to go queenside. But now that the opposing bishop has come back to d6, okay, we didn't expect the bishop retreat, but it does a great job of neutralizing the bishop on f4, and suddenly there's a little bit of justification for what Hikaru has done.
It was really the only way to get your king to the queen side, where he perhaps feels it a lot safer, because if you go opposite side castling, then Arjun was ready with the pawn storm g4, g5 coming in. You know what? Arjun doesn't care. This is why he's called the madman over the chessboard. His king is on the same side, but he's still going for that pawn attack. Again, the theme, when your opponent's knight is on b6 or on g6, you always have to keep the flank pawn movement in your mind. a4, a5, kick that knight away.
Yeah, Magnus did something very similar to Nihal Sarin in one of his successful quarterfinal games. In the meantime, we did see a trade of bishops, and there we go, the white pawn trying to act as a battering ram, opening up the black king. He defends a pawn on the other flank. Arjun does have doubled f-pawns, so endgames might be favorable for black and the knights, but short term we see the eval bar struggling to fully decide who has the advantage. It does look like it's slightly easier for Arjun just because the black king a bit weaker.
And the pawns around the king as well weakened now because of that a-pawn moving forward. You know, you could always shift your attention, moving that d1 rook, which right now stares at its own bishop and pawn, rook c1, try and target the weaknesses around the black king. It just feels like so much easier to be white. You mentioned an endgame. I'm going to predict there's going to be no endgame in this game.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like we could see something explosive happen a lot sooner rather than later. The queen moving out to d7, having half an eye on the pawn on h3, but that's not really the hottest property on the board right now. Nonetheless defended. And if the knight or bishop for white move too far from defending the e4 square, maybe Hikaru's looking at planting one of his knights onto the e4 square as well. So there's not that much maneuverability yet. I feel like there needs to be something to unlock the rest of white's attack.
Ooh, he goes back. I was expecting him to jump into the center, even at the cost of a pawn, Hikaru. But very, very passive play from him. And now Arjun's trying to hit from all angles. Arjun's not held back at all. Pawns flying forward on the king side, flying forward on the queen side. This last move given a question mark, but it's very tempting for any human to try and break open, potentially with the sacrifice, the black king.
And the speed with which Arjun played also counts for something. Hikaru's got to be feeling it himself, right? That the things are just not in the rhythm today. In that game 1, in game 2 as well. But he's the one player who's able to shift these gears really quickly. And it's far from over this one. You know, we're talking about that a6 pawn, a huge strength for Arjun. But it can, in certain positions, also come under fire. That queen from d7 could slide over to c8. And then suddenly you're wondering, how am I defending that a6 pawn? So you've got to be watching out for these ideas. Knight c7 on the board.
And it's a big moment to sacrifice or not to sacrifice for Arjun Erigaisi. He's burning a bit of time here, and that's because there's a huge move, a huge decision that is available to him. Knight takes b6. We're showing it on our analysis board. The pawn has to recapture because the black queen is hit. White's queen jumps forward. He doesn't go for this. The black king sliding in the corner. The key detail here is the black knight on d6 holding the b7 square, so there's no checkmate. The white queen cannot deliver the killer blow. White's rook here, though, could have slid across to c1 with a big attack brewing and long-lasting compensation. He didn't go for this, Arjun. I wonder if he'll regret it a bit later. And, okay, we see the game continue, but now Black's knights are in perfect defensive harmony. I would have gone for that. I just assumed Arjun, with his nickname, the Madman, the style, the fire that he likes to bring, he might have been tempted if he weren't already ahead in the match.
How low would the clocks have had to be for Arjun to have gone for that? I feel like that would have been a function of time. The more time you have to calculate it out, the less likely we would have seen the sacrifice, right? If it was a minute each on the clock, does Arjun go for that?
I think also depends on the match situation, but you're absolutely right. If you're relying on your intuition and your instinctive play, then you just play for it if you don't have time to overthink it. But Arjun, he's rushing through these decisions. Even in the last game, he didn't take knight takes bishop. He didn't take his chance in that moment. A moment missed, and in this one, another opportunity missed there.
Hikaru has grabbed a pawn. The black queen took a pawn on h3, now trying to force a trade. And to take or not to take, that is the question. Arjun, if he takes that queen, would have allowed the black pawns to connect. And look at this, Hikaru annoyed at himself. He's missed this last move, a knight retreat. Knight retreat moves are the hardest to see in chess, they say. And now Arjun's piece about to jump in with some checks. Might regain the pawn on d5. Anyone's game now.
And it's going to be so much about the clock as well right now, with both players around. 2.5 minutes for Arjun, 3 minutes 15 seconds for Hikaru, and the endgame full of opportunities. But I think White's the one pushing. Rook e5, I like that move, puts pressure on d5. If you trade, you solve Arjun's problems off those doubled f pawns. Harder decisions for Hikaru to take here.
Yeah, the black king is actually in the kill zone. Even with the queens off, that black king is not entirely safe. Rooks are coming, knights are coming, so Hikaru needs to get pieces off the board.
Now that swapping of rooks there allowed at least a little mini V formation of pawns in the center of the board. So that's going to be looking relatively solid. We've also got the pawn on d5 looking a little bit loose as well. But compared to how things were before, if you look at the relative activity of pieces between Hikaru Nakamura and Arjun Erigaisi, there's not a huge amount of difference because the black rook can move now potentially after a couple of knight maneuvers. And it's not looking as difficult to come up with a plan for Hikaru as it was before.
Yeah, and if rooks disappear, I should mention Hikaru wins on the spot, guaranteed, due to the black h-pawn pushing forward. There's no rival. That is a passed pawn. If rooks disappear, Hikaru wins. Knights disappear, Hikaru has the advantage. But for now, Arjun needs to keep pieces on the board, needs to somehow combine them and go for the black king.
It's an extra pawn for black, and that's Arjun offering a repetition right now. He jumps back with the knight. It's an inaccuracy, and this is when Hikaru leans in because he smells weakness on Arjun. You know, he knows he's got that extra pawn. Arjun offering a draw would usually mean, with a repetition, would mean that he's not happy with his position.
Yeah, you have two choices here as Hikaru Nakamura. You can agree to the draw, bring the black king back, allow it to get checked, and a dance between knight and king. Or you just say, I'm calling your bluff, I'm going to push my pawn. H4 here, pushing Harry the h-pawn forward for glory, trying to make a new queen as quickly as possible. That is the other one, but risk attached.
Huge risk attached, because White's also threatening rook to c7, knight c6, rook takes pawn, and that would be just a checkmate. So it's not only the d5 pawn that's hanging, there are checkmating ideas against the black king.
If you're Hikaru, do you not instantly play the king back anyway to repeat once to buy yourself time and then think? It's interesting that he didn't even repeat once.
Oh, he didn't, and Arjun has blundered. He was going for a checkmate. The key was not to allow the white knight into the square and allow a checkmate on a7, the Arabian checkmate. Instead, that square has been covered by the black knight. This is why an exclamation mark has appeared, and now he's 3 squares away. Black's h-pawn is 3 moves away from becoming a new queen. Arjun might just be too slow now to defend.
How do you even bring it? Your knight, your rook, your king, all offside from stopping that H-pawn from moving forward. That knight on d4, the only move that Hikaru had to defend the checkmating idea. Of course he finds it. And we've been talking about Hikaru struggling perhaps to find the flow, find the rhythm. It's wins like these, it's moments like these that puts you right back into the game.
Yeah, and it's bullet time now. Look at the red appear on Arjun's clock. He's tanked. He's realized he needs to go into reverse mode here, bring the white rook back to stop the H-pawn, but that is desperation. He goes all in, rook takes pawn, but Hikaru just needs to push. That H-pawn is becoming a new queen.
3 steps away, nothing's gonna stop it. Arjun gambling with his own E-pawn, but Hikaru's queen comes with a check on H1.
That is the key here. Arjun Erigaisi just isn't quick enough. Black gets there first in this race. Hikaru only has one winning move. The black knight cannot move away and take that pawn as the white knight jumps into c6. He needs to just keep going.
He's gonna find this. A minute and a half. Knight takes pawn, loses on the spot. You get checkmate, and of course Hikaru finds it. He's gonna check Arjun's king, make a queen, a new queen on the board, and then once the king moves away, he'll go on the defense and stop Arjun from doing the same.
Why is he not making a new queen? Why is he not pushing forward? He's trying to calculate the rest of the sequence, Hikaru, but the first move is obvious. You make a new queen now with a check, and then you think.
You do it with a check, exactly. That is forced. And he does it, and he's got to have seen it through now.
Now the black queen retreats, that's very flashy. Any rook check now from white will be blocked by that black queen. It's going to throw itself in the way. Hikaru is going to be a rook up once the dust settles. We see the head bob from him. 1 minute against 24 seconds. He's about to strike back in this match.
He's entire rook up. Arjun plays on, but it's not going to be for too long. And there it is. Arjun resigns. Hikaru Nakamura back in the match.
At the Esports World Cup, Arabian checkmate threatened. We can think of very few fitting maneuvers here that would allow Hikaru Nakamura back into this match. It is game on. 1.5 in the third place decider.
Wow, that one turned so quickly. Arjun here, we see him lingering in the arena, trying to play through, realize where it slipped away. For so long, he had a big advantage, but it let it slip. He gambled, he went for the black king. Hikaru too good in defense, and it was that H-pawn pushing that decided this game.
It was actually a beautifully played game by Arjun until that very last blunder that he did. And he's going to be kicking himself for missing this opportunity. Losing with white in this match, having a lead, is huge. And Hikaru at this moment had calculated his way through, seen this beautiful defense of bringing the queen back, and there was nothing to be done in this position. You recapture, you play another move, but eventually you resign. You're down a rook.
Arjun Erigaisi pressuring for most of that game, opting not to take the sacrifice on b6 as well, and then unfortunately, a blunder later on allowing Hikaru Nakamura back. That means the match situation in this third place match is all square. 1.5. When we come back from this break, we'll be going into game number 4.
Level up your gaming experience with over 8 billion playlists, only on Spotify, the official audio streaming partner for the 2025 Esports World Cup.
What's up, everybody? I'm Trevor, and I'm joined here by Ali Reza, your first ever chess finalist for the Esports World Cup in its debut year. First of all, congratulations.
Thank you.
When you look back on how the tournament's played out, how do you feel? Because to me, you're the best player.
Yeah, I think it's a it was very tough tournament. I think other Magnus is also playing really great. He'll play against Hikaru now, but it will be a very interesting match to see.
It's going to be interesting. I love your smile because I think no matter who wins, it's going to be a fantastic final. Now, I want to talk to you about the club championship. You're wearing a Team Falcons jersey. And the two teams that are in the top 5, they have not won a tournament yet.
Yeah.
Team Falcons and Team Liquid.
Yes.
And I think the expected final is you versus Magnus. So what would it mean to pick up the title for the first ever chess tournament for both you and Team Falcons?
Yeah, I think we have still a chance to guarantee tonight the victory. But if that doesn't happen, I'll try my best tomorrow. I think it's very important for club championship also. But I think already it was a great step to get to top 2. Yeah.
Can I ask you, did you know that before your game an hour ago, Team Falcons was 3rd in the rankings? Because of your single performance, you're now 2nd.
Yeah, I think Hikaru was also. We had same point as Hikaru.
Yes,
so
but you've guaranteed it. You did it first.
Yeah.
You did it first.
Sure.
Okay, I want to ask. Obviously, I'm aware. French, Persian. Looked into a little bit of your background. What's it like playing under the Team Falcons moniker here in Riyadh, and what's the local support been like?
It's fantastic. I think people are very nice here. They are so warm here. It's crazy, and everywhere we go, they are really helpful people, and we feel like home here.
Tell me about some of the other esports. Obviously, there's a number of other titles. Do you play any other games? Do you watch any other games? What else are you going to be tuning in for the rest of the event?
Yeah, I have PS5 at home. I play FIFA all the time. So our CEO is actually a FIFA player.
Sorry, I mean, listen, I know the history. That's where the Falcons started.
Yes,
you know?
yes.
Okay, one last question before we move on. Seeing chess at a stage like this, in a period where chess was sort of blowing up in COVID, and now it's kind of adjusting, what is that like as a professional player?
Yeah, it's here, at least it's a dream come true, I think, for chess people, because it's the top stage, and at least my dream was to always be online tournaments, fast tournaments at the high stage. So looking at this, it's just like a dream.
For the dream, do you want to give a shout out to any of the fans or any viewers at home? You can say it directly to the camera. Yeah,
I really thank the Falcon fans, because they are always here. They are always cheering us even things doesn't go well, and just that they are here, we feel them. And
those Falcon fans are now Ali Reza fans. Thank you so much.
Arjun Erigaisi drew first blood in this 3rd place match, and a tense draw in game number 2 was followed by a strike back from the Falcons in game 3. It's now 1.5 apiece between Gen G and Falcons going into the second half of regulation time, I should stress, here in the 3rd place match. We could even see an Armageddon here. This match has been very entertaining so far.
I mean, the storyline it's following is exactly what happened yesterday against Magnus. You know, Hikaru from the back foot, finally equalizing the match and you know, taking his chances. And I think this is exactly what he needed. The win that he had from the position that he had, converting it in the end with the precision that he did. Once again, David, he's gone back to being a favorite. Equalizing the score with the black pieces, starts with white in the next game.
Exactly, it's only half-time in this match, but he has 2 whites remaining from the next 3. Hikaru, he's at least historically much more dangerous with the white pieces. Arjun letting the win slip, losing with white. He's got to feel like at least some momentum has been lost. I think Hikaru there, as we see a lot of his fans in the arena, he becomes the favorite yet again. It was a shaky start to the day for him, but the fact that he's on level footing, despite not being at his best yet, that is a good sign for Hikaru fans.
And now we go into game number 4. The second half of this third place match is commencing, blitzing things out very, very quick. We have King's Indian sort of setup coming out, and as we know, Hikaru absolutely loves this sort of thing.
Yeah, it's the King's Indian meets the Slav, a bit of a hybrid here.
Meets the Grunfeld.
Meets the Grunfeld, exactly.
It's everything. They're playing everything.
Especially after that pawn trade, it looks more Grunfeld-esque, as Hikaru, he loves moving the same piece multiple times in the opening, at least in the last couple of days. That knight went forward to f3, e5, c4, back to e5, back to f3. Don't try this at home, kids. White is behind in piece development, but White occupies the center with pawns. So you have to give something to get something, and Arjun here, how can he compensate for the fact he has no central influence?
And I think that's the aim, right? Trying to get that influence into the game. You have to try to break in the center usually, either by pushing the c-pawn or the e-pawn, and I think that's the idea that perhaps Arjun will be aiming for. You need to time it really well with black, because the moment you go c5, you open up Hikaru's monstrous bishop on g2. So unless there's a concrete line, or you know, you're sure of your path ahead, that's a move you need to wait on. Arjun, meanwhile, continues to improve the position of his pieces, now setting up the battery that's about to offer a bishop trade on h3.
Yeah, and this pawn structure actually gave Alireza Firouzja a lot of success against Arjun in their semi-final. It came from a slightly different branch of this opening, but Hikaru maybe taking inspiration from his Falcons teammate there. Maybe he asked Alireza, what is Arjun's weakness? What should I do with White against him? And this is what they've settled with. You have options here. You could take even more control over the center if you are Hikaru Nakamura, push your pawn forward to e4, or you can slide your rook across maybe to e1 to dodge any potential bishop trades. Instead, he moves his queen.
And we're not liking that, at least the Silicon isn't liking that. Another reasonably natural move. That bishop can't move out of the way to h1, of course, because the rook is very much still on the f1 square. The game continues, but this is, yeah, White still has a couple of developmental problems to solve, and wow, not liking that either. Again, some question marks next to, frankly, really natural-looking moves.
Yeah, I don't think that's a blunder or anything. Maybe there were opportunities to strike in the center for Arjun that just will no longer exist, as Hikaru very naturally brings a bishop out. I don't think we can fault either player, but I think just strategically, in general, White has an advantage due to the pawn center. It's that simple. Small advantage is reflected in the eval bar right now.
But that's got to be the breakthrough idea, right? Because if you look at the pawn formation, Arjun lacking the space for his pieces, the majors and the minors, you at some point have to trade the bishops, you know, that Catalan bishop that we speak of in G2, on G2, and eventually strike in the center with the move C5, if you're Arjun here. Again, needs to time it well, but it's what he wants to do. It's also his style of play. You know, rather than just waiting and playing passively, he wants to create his chances. But so far, Hikaru's just made all the healthy moves in the position.
Well, let me ask you, what's stopping Arjun from doing that right now?
Good question.
Yeah, from breaking out?
Yeah, just taking the bishop and trying to get c5 in before the c line is clear. The rook has gone on to d1 instead of c1, so maybe there's an opportunity here?
Yeah, and black playing the move c5 is very likely in the near future. That will always, however, be met by a white pawn stepping forward to d5. I'll just draw those arrows as we will see that theme exist for the next dozen moves or so. A question mark instead by Arjun here, retreating his knight. He's maybe getting ready to challenge in the center with another e5 push. Either way, it's so passive for black. That poor black queen cannot move. She's got no vision into this game. And again, Hikaru just playing happy moves here. He's playing natural moves. Rook's in the center, knights out, bishop out. Looks like textbook opening play here from Hikaru Nakamura.
Total harmony for white.
Yes.
In the center of the board, you control the center with your pawns on e4, d4. You've placed everything, and all the moves that he's made doesn't require overthinking at all, right? You're improving every single piece, and you're making them quickly. Meanwhile, because of lack of space, it's a completely different story for Arjun, who's not even being able to find a way to connect his rooks. Look at the bishop on f4, making sure the black queen remains stuck on c8. The last move by Arjun, he's dying to break out right now. He wants to get that e5 on the board as quickly as possible.
You can even play moves like b3 and just really clamp down on black's options here so that that knight on b6 literally has nowhere to go. The the amount of prophylaxis, Hikaru can just choose at this point what direction he wants the game to go in. It feels like all the initiative is with white.
And at least we got to the bottom of why Arjun's move rook to d8 earlier was given a question mark, because bringing it back to e8 was necessarily a couple of moves later. Big problem here for Arjun is that he cannot lash out. He cannot strike in the center. The move he wants to play is pawn to e5, but we would have seen some trades, and black's h6 pawn is hanging in so many different variations. He wishes it were back one square. Knight on f8, no checkmate, that's what they say, but that knight on f8 is just a sad piece, and it's one that he hates.
So, quick club level chess question here. Does king h7 solve any of black's problems if h6 is an issue?
It might do in the near future. That's why Arjun is tying his king down now. The white queen staring down a diagonal towards that black king, which is paralyzed. Had to defend the f7 point. I think that was maybe next on the docket, so
okay.
Arjun tries to prevent it. Oh, sorry, Hikaru tries to prevent it, I should say. And now Arjun driving his pieces slightly further forward, but another question mark given. Is now the moment to strike for Hikaru Nakamura?
And again, it comes down to those trigger points, right? When do you know it's time to get concrete in the position to create those critical decisions? Every single piece of Hikaru is playing beautifully, is placed, maximized to their potential. This might be that moment where he does push one of those central pawns forward, gaining more space, and, you know, asking some serious questions to Arjun.
Don't forget, though, if he does push one of those pawns forward, it is very committal, so he needs to make sure he gets a concrete advantage from it. Are we looking at d5, e5? Could the h-pawn even get chucked forward? What's the committal move here?
I think it's going to be d5. I like h5 as well. Throw that h-pawn, alpha 0-esque in. But d5 seems like the forcing move here. You're hitting the knight. There are also this tension between the bishop and the knight, and there it arrives on the board. Hikaru agrees with you, John. It happened. Pawn takes pawn, and now a decision to be made. Do you capture the knight? Do you jump in with your own knight at the center of the board? Pawn takes pawn is the choice. Again, not easy for Arjun where to decide to place his knight. He jumps forward, attacking the white queen.
You called it, Tanya. I mean, this is the choice that Hikaru Nakamura has gone. Now, this is a very aggressive counterattacking move with the knight to c5. So the question will be where white's queen chooses to go off the back of it. If you retreat to c2, then you run the risk of some sneaky pins with the black queen opposing on c7.
Yep, the white queen has a few moves, but no, it's a counterattack against the black queen and an instant reply from Arjun Erigaisi. A very nice intermediate move there, a Zwischenzug we would call it in chess. Just before you have to react to your opponent's threat, you create a threat of your own, and the black queen had to move. If she had fallen, there would have been a knight fork as well in the process, so no queen trade yet. And Hikaru can now has a maybe slightly more kind of wide variety of choices for where to plant his own queen. 4 safe squares for white, and which one's he going to choose? He's got to attack the black knight either way.
You know, Hikaru's body language, the way he's been playing this game, his moves, how he's placed the pieces. Last game, he was back in the match. I think what I see from him, he's ready to take the lead in this match. He's attacking the queen, not thinking about defending his own. Now he's going to move it to an active square. I'll be surprised if he decides to trade the bishop for the knight, you know, just losing the possibility of challenging. And as I say that, commentators curse, bishop takes knight on the board. He's going for some direct ideas here. Attacks the queen. Is Arjun running out of escape squares?
Yeah, there's a fork in the air. The queens might well come off on this next move now, but that white knight is guaranteed to win one of the 2 black rooks. It's a material advantage for Hikaru Nakamura. He takes the rook in the corner. He's calculated this all. One of the white rooks might fall now, but then the black knight would chop off, and at the end, white would have an extra piece. If that white knight is captured in the corner, Hikaru will save his rook. It's a bishop and 2 pawns for that rook, level material for now, but so many open lines.
We've introduced a whole bunch of new imbalances into this position. This is going to get very interesting indeed. Advantage Nakamura, of course, he wanted to introduce these imbalances into the game. He is now dictating terms to Arjun Erigaisi. The game is definitely not won, but it's certainly white now, very much on the front foot.
And you know, for Arjun, it's bishop and 2 pawns for the rook. And if you do the math, that's enough compensation. That's 5 points apiece for both players. But the problem is the black knight on a8 is really stuck there because you can't allow the white rook to swoop onto that 7th rank. So it's really about the piece activity. Meanwhile, for Hikaru, that knight from d2 is about to jump to e4 and further into the position closer to the black pawns, creating threats. So it just feels like Arjun's too late to get those minors into the game to get the pawns rolling up.
And this is, again, one area of Arjun Erigaisi's chess that he might be working on in the near future. He doesn't like defending these technical endgames. It's not just that. Of course, he's starting on the back foot here quite heavily. It's an uphill struggle, mainly because of the Black Knight. The Black Knight, if it could be improved, the Black Rook, if it were more active, maybe there are some drawing chances. He does try to activate that Rook. We'll see the White Knight threaten Black's Bishop now and defended by its King. Judgment call. Is he going to take that Bishop off the board, Tanya?
Very tempting to do it, but I think he's going to wait. I like the position of the Knight also because it can jump to the left side and attack that pawn on b7. The computer doesn't love it, but it also looked like the kind of move that you want to make, provoking some weaknesses, eventually trying to target the a7 pawn as well, with one of the rooks sliding over to the a line.
And it's a provocative move here. If Black pushes a pawn forward to b6, maybe the most natural reaction to the fact that that pawn is hit, the White Knight will happily retreat and then look at the Black piece in the corner. It will be a block of dead wood there. And instead, in the end, he decides to attack the White Knight. At least he's getting active, Arjun. He's given one of the pawns back, so now White does have a concrete material advantage. But at least there is some pressure. I do like this last decision, at least, from Arjun.
He had to do it. He has to try to create some activity from his pieces. The knights do come out. It might be time for Hikaru to improve the position of his own rooks, get them into the game to make the most of the material advantage.
We're all taking a look at when the rook was going to come into the 7th. That hasn't really happened yet. But with the rook to d1 here, it's beginning to look like we're threatening potential for a knight to jump in, for example, trade off a pair of minor pieces and then get in behind. Now's not quite the right time, of course, because the bishop's defending the pawn on e7. But at some opportune moment, that's got to be what Hikaru's thinking. Pushing the a-pawn forward now, thinking about getting into the endgame. And Hikaru now choosing to go in, not to the 7th, but to the back rank.
And it comes with a threat, right? Rook b8, pinning that Black Knight is the big idea. That square had to be defended. Arjun does it, but Hikaru knows that he should be pushing for the edge, and I think that head shake is more of maybe that small frustration that he allowed this piece activity of Arjun's.
Exactly, that Black Knight got out. It cost Arjun a pawn, but it's a very worthwhile investment there. And the Black Bishop does look like it controls a lot of squares, maybe regretting the opportunity, kind of not taking the opportunity earlier to trade White's Knight for that Black Bishop.
The bishop on, the knight rather, on c5 is the only defender of the pawn on b3 right now. So bishop d6 looks like such a natural move for Black to play as well. So the plan for Arjun Erigaisi looks relatively straightforward to follow. The computer not liking the rook going to e8 though.
Yeah, that was the only piece caging the Black Knight. The Black Knight was actually trapped. It didn't have any squares to use. Now it can enter the center. Another idea, kicking away the White Knight from the defense of b3. You just mentioned there, John, also available if the Black Bishop slides back to d6. Can come forward to d4 as well. Does feel like Hikaru is just losing the thread a bit. He's been playing quite quickly up until this last turn, spending 30 seconds there. I do feel that he wants to play a bit on the clock.
So is the idea then that the knight comes to d5 to accomplish the same thing instead, and if White moves the rook back to d8 to attack the knight, then you play bishop d6, and now your knight's out of the corner.
Exactly. It feels like this is the key move that we're showing on the board, getting the Black Knight in. Okay, the bar slightly rises after Arjun's move instead. Maybe a small missed opportunity. But still, in the balance here, Arjun probably should be holding this endgame a majority of the time, but the clock is going to play such a huge role. How many times have we seen Hikaru Nakamura grind his opponents down in a long endgame with a bit of a helping hand from the time?
And when it comes down to those last few seconds, that's going to be incredibly tough for Arjun. Arjun's a super fast player, and he's usually the one who's ahead on the clock. But when it comes to time scrambles, I think Hikaru Nakamura is a clear, big favorite in this one. He's not as good because he's just not as used to handling time pressure. Arjun Erigaisi, you just don't see him coming down to those final few seconds. We saw that, how it worked against Ali Reza, to absolute disaster for Arjun. So at all costs, he has to keep those extra minutes on the clock to be able to defend this. Hikaru not happy with his position.
He's been shaking his head for the last 30 seconds. Very clearly here. Not happy with what's just happened. The White Knight doesn't have many safe squares. If you retreat that White Knight either to c3 or d2, you might just get pinned by the Black Rook. If you step your king forward, poke its face forward, then you'll get checked back. You might have to defend that knight with your pawn. We'll see a check here from Arjun Erigaisi, and the White King will be forced back. Hikaru still in the driver's seat, but the clock now suddenly not in his favor anymore.
Is the idea maybe to zigzag the king via e2 to d3, and the knight on e4 just about holds this together? I mean, it's looking a little bit ropey, but I think, does it even hold? I'm not even sure.
think that's the plan. But, Arjun wondering whether to even push the White King back yet, maybe looking for something else. The one thing you don't want to allow is the 2 White Rooks to get into the 8th rank. There might be some checkmating ideas behind the Black Army, but Arjun does centralize. Beautiful pieces for Arjun, but now pinned by the White Rook.
And with the speed with which Hikaru responded, it was almost like he was expecting this move on the board. It did come with a trap of its own. The knight on e4 could in some positions be picked up and some forking ideas on f6. Hikaru just continuously looking unhappy with the choices that he's making, but he still holds the advantage. He's still doing pretty well on the clock as well as the board.
Quite calm, Hikaru. The heart rate down under 90. It hasn't always been that way, especially yesterday, but even in the match so far today. And the quick moves coming, the 40-second time difference. Arjun has to speed up. We've all been there. We've all been checkmated by Hikaru. Lost games due to the clock. He cannot allow himself to get under the 1-minute mark.
The clock has not been a huge factor in this matchup just yet. Through the middle game, both players here, both contenders, have done a reasonably good job of maintaining their time management. But as we go on and on, as we get further and further in this game, small differences start to mean a lot. 2 minutes 30 plays 1 minute 50. Hikaru Nakamura, arguably the faster player with more time. In another minute or so, this will start becoming critical.
Well, if you're Hikaru right now, you also want to try to get some trades into the position. I think he wants to make that possible. If you can get the rooks off the board, you should be winning on the spot. But that isn't the case right now. He does fall back with the rook, defending that bishop on b6. How is Hikaru going to make progress? And will 2 minutes be enough to convert his advantage into a full point?
You can see the focus now. Hikaru switching modes, switching up the pace. He's just playing useful moves. Okay, bit of a scratch there under the headphones. He's just trying to get into the flow state, into the zone. And the Team Falcons player tries to turn this endgame in his favor. Not easy to find moves for Arjun. He just has to hope and sit there. Oh, and sometimes it's better not to do anything. He's pushed a pawn forward. That's only weakened the Black King. His pawn structure now, those pawns won't move backwards. Those pawns vulnerable.
Just sitting is not Arjun's one of Arjun's strengths. He's a player who always wants to do something on the board. You know, most times it works to his favor, but sometimes it backfires, like when you end up creating weaknesses for yourself. Arjun now tries to bring the king to the defense, but that trade of knights could have only favored Hikaru. He's up material, any trade favors white.
Yeah, especially the rooks coming off the board. Some scenarios, if the black pawns were further back, you could trade off rooks, especially if the queen side is liquidated in the meantime. Black's bishop very, very passive. 1 minute plays 1 minute 45, though. That is the key factor in this position.
Pieces now continuing to move a little bit faster now. We're feeling the sense of urgency. Hikaru Nakamura forcing Arjun Erigaisi under a minute now. And even though it looks like white is a bit stronger on the board, anything can happen in a time scramble. Here we go.
But this is all turned around. Arjun's about to win a pawn on h5, and that's a big pawn to win. You know, you move your king back, the h-pawn starts moving forward. You can imagine the 4 versus 2 on that right flank will give you something to play for, counterplay to play for, which is why Hikaru boxes up the black king. Now a check on h1 would be game over. Rook c1, rook h1, watch out, Arjun.
He trades off rooks in desperation. Arjun Erigaisi here. Maybe it's an inspired decision, but look at this. He's dropping one of the pawns he just picked up. Given a question mark from Hikaru, but I think the most natural move in the position. Now it's 3 versus 4 in terms of pawns. Black king very, very active. Can Hikaru maneuver his rook to win black's pawn on the queen side? That is the key to the position.
Arjun scared of those checkmating ideas, gets the rooks off the board, but turns out that is a bad decision right now. He needs to defend. That bishop just stopped, paralyzed from getting active. And for Hikaru, the good news is the b3 pawn cannot be targeted by that bishop. Arjun attacks, he's activated it. Now the bishop will defend it from b4.
Black king is actually cut off on the edge of the board as well. He went the wrong direction. Hikaru tries to open up a path for the white king. It's all about the clock though. And there we go. Hikaru might have clinched it with this last move. There's a big weakness on the f5 square. That black pawn is doomed potentially. He just needs to move his king here, waste a move, Hikaru, and the black bishop is stuck. Whichever direction you go, you're going to lose a pawn. The black king coming. 15 seconds though. It's just physically impossible for Arjun to make the rest of these moves. You can't even pre-move because the white rook is going to hunt down that black bishop.
10 seconds, he loses the pawn, and Arjun Erigaisi resigns. Hikaru Nakamura with the fist bump takes the lead.
Hikaru Nakamura, he was a point down in this third place match, managing to win a second game now to go 2.5, 1.5 up. Team Falcons now have the upper hand in this third place match over Gen G, putting Arjun Erigaisi in a high pressure situation. Nakamura now just 1 point away from taking it.
Hikaru, he has upped his game. He's fully awake now, and he smells weakness in his opponent. Arjun just couldn't really fight Hikaru from a level playing field in that one. The opening went a bit wrong. Hikaru getting an advantage and never let up. Eventually, pressure on both the board and the clock was decisive. Very impressive, I'm going to say, from Hikaru Nakamura, but Arjun needs to rediscover the magic that he had at the beginning of the day.
Hikaru's won the last two on the trot with both the white and the black pieces. It looks like whatever he's changed, whatever's going on, he's not only woken up, he is smelling blood, and he's now 1 win away from taking it.
He's just found his flow into this match, you know, a little shaky at the start, the first few games, but then ever since getting that win with the black pieces, finds his rhythm. The Falcon is soaring. Hikaru Nakamura definitely back in the game, feeling himself. You can look on the screen and you know that this is a different Hikaru from the start of the day.
And now, with Game 5 and Game 6 to go, we need to see one of those be a win for Arjun Erigaisi. Ideally, the next game, they can draw the next game, but then it will be a must-win situation for the final game. And Arjun Erigaisi has white now, so he would be realistically looking to strike back immediately. This is so important for the club championship as well, because those 500 points for Gen G could prove critical at the end of the Esports World Cup.
So important also for the team, but on a personal level, Arjun, he struggles to beat these top guys. He's fantastic at beating players lower rated than him, at getting inside their skin, at attacking them. But the likes of Magnus, the likes of Hikaru in match situations, he's yet to really do it on a consistent basis, and he wants to break through in this in his career. It felt like this might be his day the way he started, but the last two games, it just feels like he's running out of steam a bit. Something's just been a bit off with Arjun, just lacking the energy we're used to.
And I think one of the reasons for that, why he struggles against the very best in the world, has been also Arjun's biggest strength, his brand of chess. You know, when he brings on those attacks, those chaotic positions which require players to calculate and be precise, Arjun's awesome at that. But he finds it difficult to be a more universal player, you know, to hold, to play safe, to play maybe that, to have that cautious approach when it's needed. It's been sort of a struggle for him to kind of develop that more universal style of play. And against guys like Hikaru, you need to be playing every aspect of the game to the best of your ability.
Now, let me ask you a follow-up question to that, Tanya. Speaking of slowing things down, knowing when to hold back, are we going to see Hikaru go for the throat here and try and get the full point with black? Or is he saying, actually, I just need 2 draws, let's calm it down a bit?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, Hikaru's got so many wins with black in the last 2 days. You know, his first one against Magnus with the black pieces in the King's Indian. The only defeat that Magnus Carlsen has had here in Riyadh was that game. And for Hikaru, you know, even in this match, coming back with that victory that he did in round 3 with the black pieces. So I think if he gets that opportunity, if he gets the chance, he'll take it.
Okay.
But will he try to create those chances himself? I don't think so. I think he'll keep it as he knows that Arjun's the player who'll make it happen himself on the board.
Right.
You know, Arjun, he needs to. Arjun doesn't have an option. Hikaru doesn't need to take the fight to Arjun. It'll come to him.
So in other words, Hikaru knows that Arjun may need to take a risk, maybe needs to play 1 or 2 suboptimal moves on purpose to try and shake things up. And Hikaru, knowing that that's coming, it helps him understand where those critical positions will be. It helps him understand where he needs to slow down and think. And he will try and pounce and turn that inaccuracy, deliberate inaccuracy, I should add, into a full-blown mistake and really try to punish Arjun for it.
Exactly. That's his favorite role these days, Hikaru Nakamura. Just the counter-puncher. He just waits. He's super patient. He loves his endgames. Note how the 2 games that Hikaru won were after the queens came off. And it was only then did he press an advantage. And I think he's going to wait for that to happen again if he gets a chance to make it slower, or if Arjun goes full guns blazing at him, maybe sacrifices incorrectly, then Hikaru will wake up and try to score this full point. Hikaru would love a draw, though. Let's be honest. He would love this game. He would love to take it to Game 6 with the lead with white pieces.
100%. And I think that strategy that you're talking about, Hikaru, it works against everyone in the world,
Right.
Except a certain Magnus Carlsen. I think with Magnus, you need to create those chances yourself. You need to try to create the chaos on the board. But for Hikaru, you know what he does, this waiting game, it's perfect. And I think especially against a player like Arjun Erigaisi.
That's weird, isn't it? Chess is a game of complete information. You know exactly where your opponents and your pieces are at all times, and yet somehow some things work against some players and not others. It's part of what makes the game so beautiful. And in this situation, we have Arjun being the wilder of the two players and also basically needing to win on command. Nakamura will be thinking of ways to shut it down, but I'm looking forward to seeing what the potential counter-punches could be.
And in the meantime, this position, wow, pawn to f5 is very, very committal, opening up the black king somewhat, a very loosening move there. But Hikaru is fighting against this. I was going to say it's going to become very symmetrical, but white had a small advantage. Now, maybe white still has that small advantage, but anything but symmetrical. White has 3 pawns in front of his king, black has 2. Hikaru, in his attempts to shut this game down and prevent any active play, feels like he's weakened himself. A big, big shake of the head, prolonged one this time.
Yeah, it feels like no matter what you do in the middle of the board right now, that e-pawn currently on e6 is looking like a long-term target. No matter who you're playing, no matter what the position is, that is a very obvious question mark / target in the middle of the board for the white pieces to direct their attention to.
100%. That e6 pawn is weak, and if there's a d5 pawn, trade and that pawn lands there, that'll be weak there as well, with the white queen lined up against it. I think there are some practical problems for black in this position to solve. You know, if you trade the bishops on Arjun's turn, bishop takes bishop, rook takes bishop, huge weakness. Right. Easily can be taken on. And what we see right now, the trade as it's happened, after pawn takes pawn, the queen lines open up, bishop takes knight. In fact, d5 is hanging immediately. Hikaru might be forced to capture with the bishop, which means a long-term weakness, the isolated queen's pawn.
This is going to be a lot of suffering ahead from Hikaru. Maybe it's not too dramatic yet. The eval bar says nearly +1 for white. Really surprised Arjun didn't take the opportunity to open up the d-file for the white queen there. Maybe he'll get a second chance. But ultimately, it is a few things. It's the fact that black's pawns in the center are vulnerable, plus the fact that long-term, the black king slightly open. And here, Arjun with a big time advantage as well. Dream start to the game here in his quest to come back.
Maybe it's because he doesn't have to. Maybe the c-pawn can't be pushed to c4, also doesn't want to take on d4 and ruin the pawn structure, and white actually has time. There's no need to take on c5. I can take whenever I want. I'm just going to improve the position of the rest of my pieces and torture you a little while longer.
You know, one of the hardest things in chess is to keep tension on the board. It's something that I've struggled with a lot in my career as well, and I think players of all levels do. But I think these top guys, and I've seen this especially with Arjun, that if there's an option to just keep the trades as they are and not rush into it because that dynamic cannot change in the near future, he won't do it until it's absolutely forced. He will want to keep that tension, keep improving the position of his pieces. You know, get that rook out to d1, then think about capturing on c5. Meanwhile, Hikaru continues to activate some of his own pieces.
But I'm gonna, like, the counter argument to that is maybe taking a look back at game 3, Tanya. Arjun kept the tension on the board, kept things really complicated. He was pressuring from an advantageous position, and there's an argument to say that partially because of that, Hikaru seized the opportunity to turn that game around, and he ended up making it a victory.
Now, that's a great point, but you got to stick to your style, you know, because more often than not, that will work to you. And to decide when to do it, when not to do it, is the tough part about chess. The last few moves that have happened, David, the king sliding over, I think at some point, that tension in the center will get released. Maybe now with the bishop sniping across?
Yeah, now might be the moment. Very committal decision there from Hikaru. He didn't want to spend time investing to calculate there too deeply. As you say, Tanya, the white bishop I'm just going to show on the same diagonal as the black king, so watch out, Hikaru Nakamura. You have to keep your eye open for tactics a bit later. But for now, everything's covered, and black in return had some counter threats on the f2 square.
A little bit less forced as well, because queen takes d5 no longer came with check, I suppose. So just trying to force the issue a little bit and relieving a bit of the tension. And we're just adding a defender now to the f2 square. And once again, that pawn continues to look like the center of attention, for good reason.
Yeah, that bishop on b2 just reminds me of the bow and arrow that Magnus was referring to yesterday in his winner's speech after taking down one falcon. The white bishop, it's like an arrow staring across the board. But for now, Hikaru has everything covered, and a bit of a trap. Queen takes pawn would be a losing blunder here. If the white queen were to capture on d5, we would see a game-ending skewer. And you cannot allow that for Arjun. Of course, greed is not good here. We'll just show it on the board. Queen takes pawn. The black rook would slide across. And whoops, you find your rook undefended at the bottom of the board. The white queen would be forced out of the way. And rook takes, rook check. Black has extra material and a deadly attack against the white king. So Hikaru here defending his isolated queen's pawn with tactics, with some tricks. And yes, this is kind of chess 101 when it comes to back rankers, but all important as you try to turn the middle game in your favor. The knight jumps forward to block instead.
You know, there are two strategies when your opponent's got the isolated queen's pawn. Either you go for a direct attack against it, which Arjun tried, cannot capture it, cannot win that pawn. And the second strategy is you blocket it, you use a piece square in front of that pawn, which is the strongest spot for you in the position to replace your pieces to better squares. And usually, the one that belongs there is the knight. Place that knight in front of the isolated queen's pawn. It can't be kicked back. It's the strongest position for that knight, and that's what he finds it. Also comes in with a threat. Knight to e6 at the right moment. Watch out.
Yeah, and this is another big moment. Arjun, in his desperation to avoid any tactics on the D file, might have opened up some tactics on the F file. Right now, Hikaru, we saw him kind of frown for a moment. He spent a lot of time. It looks like he might be tempted to give up his knight on the F2 square. He can take with the knight or the rook. And look at this. After the black knight gives itself up, we would see some trades. The white king coming forward. And it's the black queen now able to swoop in, take on H2. The black rook is coming next move to F8. The white king lacking shelter. The black bishop pins the white knight. Suddenly we could see a full turn of momentum. Black also gets 2 pawns for this sacrificed knight. It looks like the eval bar says this is the best way to go. Still a small advantage for Arjun, but this would be a real shock. Hikaru, will he go for this variation? Huge moment. If he doesn't, he might just find himself a bit passive. This might be his chance to strike Hikaru Nakamura. What do we think? Is he going to go for it?
I mean, he's thinking so long on this, right? 4 minutes now, plays 6.5, and I get that these guys are super quick on the clock, but if this gets up to something like a 3-minute advantage, not only are we going to have to commit, if we choose not to commit, we're then just playing the game out. 6 minutes versus 3, that's going to give Arjun Erigaisi a renewed sense of confidence.
Yeah, but it's on Hikaru to make that decision, and he goes for it.
Here we go.
Knight takes pawn. It's on the board. He wants to wrap this match up here and now.
Wow, this is a 3-result game. Hikaru is going to get a ferocious attack in return for the piece he's just sacrificed. He's even got those couple of pawns we mentioned. He spent a long, long time, 2 full minutes, pondering over whether to go for this, but Arjun looking calm, the heart rate still low. Can he react? It's so scary now for white. You never want to play chess with your king out in the open like this, especially if you're the one trying to attack, if you prefer being on the front foot. I think this is inspired by Hikaru Nakamura.
Absolutely. This is taking the fight to Arjun. This is the kind of stuff that Arjun does against his opponents. Huge threat on the board. Rook F8 check. It's not just a check. That G2 pawn is tender. That's a soft pawn. Queen takes pawn would be game over if it's allowed. Arjun has to find a way to not only defend the king, but do it in such a way that he doesn't lose his queen. Because Queen F3 would have run into Rook F8. Queen H3 offers a trade, defends that pawn. I don't believe Hikaru trades in this position. He's going to keep the queens on the board. He's going to go for Arjun's king.
No trades. White has the extra knight. Black's pawns are not so impressive right now. And, okay, it was just one check. The white king's actually trying to run away to the left half of the board. Give white 2 more moves. The white king will find safety again. So Hikaru needs to keep the queens on, needs to keep creating threats. And what do we think here? Tanya, you know Arjun so well. Your teammates for India. Do you believe he's going to be able to defend this one?
I'll tell you one thing, Arjun's not going to be stressed or tensed about this position. You know, it's the kind of position which is crazy on the board, but this is where Arjun feels the calmest. This is where his nerves are absolutely chill. It's what he does for a living, are these kind of crazy, chaotic positions. But can he save this with the time on the clock? The good news, he's got the extra minutes. Hikaru continues with the checks. Arjun can use his queen to block it, offer a trade. Remember, any queen trade, great for Arjun. Game over for Hikaru. So it's pressure on Hikaru to keep the attack going. If he doesn't, Hikaru's lost.
Don't forget the clock pressure as well. It took him 3 minutes for that. The queen actually going back to H2, saying, okay, maybe the path forward isn't so clear. Are we interested maybe in doing any of this repetition stuff? But Arjun doesn't have to say yes to that.
Yep, Arjun will not be agreeing to a draw here. We're not repeating moves by sliding the white queen across to h3. He'll look for something else, look for something better. Ideas could include sliding the white king across, trying to bring that one to safety, although it does look a bit slow. You could defend that pawn with your queen, maybe even with your rook. It does feel like white has enough control for now to be able to defend.
But he needs to find a way, right? Because if you don't, it's a bit scary to face this as well, with the black queen and the rook. You know, yes, you can run with your king, but you're essentially giving black at least 3 pawns, which is more than enough compensation. So unless Arjun finds a good way to defend g2 and stop that check on e5, he might end up repeating and bail out in this position.
And here, the all-seeing engine, the computer, our silicon friend, says that this move is by far the best for white. Bring the queen to g5, and the key detail is you defend your pawn on g2, but you also attack this black pawn on d5, from where you also defend g2. This is the move we're looking for. If he finds it, Arjun, a big favorite.
Oh, he does!
It's 2 multi-purpose moves in a row. It's watching the g2 square, it's watching the e5 square, and guess what? The only other square the white queen can do that from is d5 after capturing the pawn.
You know, not just that, it was 3. Even g7 was a tender spot. Hikaru kicks the queen, he wins the pawn.
Hikaru reacted. He kind of leaned forward as if he might have missed this one. The black queen slides back, and there's a huge threat now. The black rook is trying to infiltrate on the second rank. The white king in the kill zone this time needs to run away as soon as it can.
Get it to the left side of the board. Rook f2 is a massive threat that will end in checkmate. Arjun locked in. He moves the rook, and that's a blunder. Hikaru Nakamura has a winning move right now.
Hikaru Nakamura, he needs to find the fact he can move his bishop to attack that rook. We'll just draw it with an arrow here. Bishop to b4 is a winning move that would tip white's defenses over. And no, he doesn't find it, Hikaru. Instead, he's going to trade rooks. This could be decisive now, white with an extra knight. Wow, missed opportunity. That was hidden. It's not obvious, I'm going to say, from Hikaru Nakamura, but he's chasing the white king now only towards safety.
When he had the option to give it check, to make a small quiet move with the bishop, taking away the escape route for the white king. Not an easy spot, but a huge, huge miss there by Hikaru, which has now gotten, in fact, Arjun back on the winning advantage as his king runs to safety, an extra piece on the board. And once it's Arjun on the attack with that bishop on b2 and the queen on d5 combining, the knight jumping to e6, that would be game over. Hikaru has to continue giving the checks.
Look at this, the white king hiding amongst its own pieces. This is beautiful defense here. A lot of shelter for the white king. No important checks here. The only check black can give is from the queen, but that will be blocked by the white knight. Hikaru's running out of ammunition. Look at this, the eval bar slides all the way up in white's favor. Hikaru reacting. He's down at 1 minute as well. This has all gone wrong. Ice cold defense from Arjun. Such a difficult position. We can forgive the players the mistakes, but it's all about what's left on the board, and Hikaru out of threats.
And throughout this madness that happened, Arjun's heart rate did not go beyond 80. Again, it comes back to this point. These kind of positions, he's just Mr. Cool Guy. It's just so hard to get him tense, and that is it. Hikaru Nakamura resigns. Arjun Erigaisi equalizes.
2.5 in this third place match. We are going to be going to a game number 6, and that game number 6 is all square, which means a draw in the final game, tipping Armageddon. Wow, what a topsy-turvy game that was.
Arjun ice cold in his defense there. Hikaru had his chances. He was the one who went for it. Fair play to Hikaru. He wanted to be the master of his own destiny. Ultimately, though, he missed this key move. Bishop to b4. He would have turned the tables there, would have won, might have even just banked that third place on the spot. In the end, this chase of the white king only helped Arjun, and in the final position, white with a full extra knight.
And with that, I think this match now is certainly on the stream. I don't know if it's on the Esports World Cup so far. Definitely the match with the most decisive games. We have seen some fire on the board here. Very, very decisive, very few draws. In fact, just the one, I believe, getting to this point. So incredibly strong stuff from both players, and it's fitting that this goes all the way down to game number 6.
4 punches traded in this one, 2 by each of this. I mean, this is just a firework of a match that it is. But that's what's expected when you've got players like this, right? World number 2 Hikaru Nakamura taking on world number 5 Arjun Erigaisi here. Experience versus explosiveness. For Hikaru, You know, his legacy is on the line in this match. Yes, he's not fighting for championship, but it's third place. It's glory, it's pride for Team Falcons. For Arjun Erigaisi, he's writing his legacy right now. You know, it's just the beginning of his chess career at the very, very top. So this means a lot to him, playing for Genji, trying to get that third spot for his club.
He wants this to be the passing of the torch moment. And this is very, very knife-edged in game number 6. Folks, we're playing for 3 results. You know that in chess, of course. You've got a white win, a black win, and a draw. But as far as the match is concerned, as far as third place in the Esports World Cup is concerned, we are also playing for 3 results with this very game.
And Hikaru Nakamura, perhaps inspired by his opponent in this one, he tries to set up with the white pieces just how Arjun Erigaisi set up in the previous game, also with white. We see some quick trades in the center. Hikaru still clearly reeling from the shock of that previous defeat. And big moment, Arjun decides to capture with a pawn, establishing the first imbalance. IQP, the isolated queen's pawn, the pawn on d5. Hikaru loves playing against it. But it does promise Arjun some active play with his pieces.
And this is such a knife's edge sort of a match, right? Because how much risk do you take? There's no margin for error. If things go wrong, it's match over. Do you have a safety first approach? Do you say, I want to delay, you know, that take it to the Armageddon, make sure that I have that safety net of being able to shut down the position? Or will Arjun, even with the black pieces, stick to his brand of chess?
I was trying to avoid talking about Armageddon, but I think, Tanya, you've brought it up at the perfect time, because the question we have to ask ourselves is Hikaru actually much more favored if we go to Armageddon? Is he happy for this to fizzle out?
It's difficult. They had, I think, a mixed history in Norway chess just a few months ago in the Armageddon. Hikaru, surprisingly, in Armageddon chess, doesn't have an amazing record. It's decent, but you would think for such a speed specialist that it would be much more impressive than it is. I think it's going to be pure 50-50. Hikaru might depend on his bid. Yesterday against Magnus went so low on the clock.
6 minutes 12, I want to say?
Yeah. Came back to haunt him.
That was a very surprising decision. And I think Hikaru said it earlier here in Riyadh, right? That the Armageddon win just depends on the decision that you make on the color that you want and if you're able to get it. Yesterday, he wanted the black pieces desperately, but went perhaps just a tad bit too low. But still, the Armageddon's a game away. And I think this game's going to be quite the one. You know, the imbalances are there. That isolated queen's pawn. And look at Hikaru's last move. That knight from h4, yes, it offers trades, but it's also headed to that f5 square. And if it's allowed to get there, then we're looking at the makings of some attacks. If black retreats with the bishop, avoiding the trade, defending that square, that gives Hikaru the possibility to jump further with his bishop targeting the d5 pawn. I don't think this is so simple for Arjun to handle.
Yeah, and the fact that Arjun has paused so much here, that the fact that he's burnt over 2 minutes is worrying. This is still well-known theory. This is still a very typical idea. The white knight going to h4. It's kind of borrowed from colors reversed, the Nimzo Indian defense, where there's an identical idea against the isolated queen's pawn. Hikaru, of course, he's familiar with it. Super experienced in these fianchetto lines with a white bishop on b2. It's his bread and butter. He plays it day in, day out on chess.com when he's playing blitz. The fact that Arjun hasn't prepared, the fact that he's not enjoying this position, the fact it's about to become very strategic with black the only side with a weakness, all seems to favor Hikaru Nakamura. The bishop goes back. It's the bishop pair as well for white now. And Tanya's move, bishop to f3, hitting black central pawn, already looks fantastic for white.
Very, very quick to move that back. And then pre-moving, of course, recapturing. Arjun Erigaisi here. We've seen him work wonders with the knights in the middle of the board. Maybe he's not panicking over the loss of 2 bishops or anything like that, but when we see the center potentially opening up like this, we do have to ask ourselves the question, are the bishops just the more powerful piece here?
Arjun loves his knights, but again, it comes down to the position that you have. You know, this is going to be a defensive one for those knights. Usually, if you've got the knight pair, if you've got a knight versus bishop imbalance, you want the position to be closed. Knights are short-range pieces. They jump around, but they can't make that far route too quickly. So you want more pawns on the board. This one, absolutely blown open. The bishop's beautifully placed for Hikaru on the longest diagonals on the both of them. The light squared bishop will not be challenged and has a clear, direct target on d5. This is a dream position for the side with the bishop pair.
Exactly, dream position for Hikaru. Arjun's last move given a question mark. Maybe this is the moment that Hikaru will try to open up the center even further. He can push his e-pawn forward. Maybe another tempting option would be to move the white queen, slide the white rook from f1 over into the center. Arjun's knights very, very passive. That's the key. whatever configuration you like, and the queen does move, it is about active pieces. Bishop's active, knight's active. That tends to be a necessity in these types of middle games. Missed opportunity, maybe it was better to open the center.
Yeah.
The red X appearing, but Hikaru's position still preferable.
Queen d2 looks very, very sensible indeed. So I was very surprised to see that red X in the corner. It must be something to do with opening the center being potentially better. Don't know.
It looked that way, and now Arjun trying to force the issue, not enjoying the position too much. He trades off dark squared bishops. At least the pair of bishops is gone. But the black queen's slightly offside for now. We'll have to burn an extra tempo going back in the near future. And again, Hikaru, his move given a question mark. I will tell audiences at home, the computer has been crying out for the move e4 over the last few turns, just to open up white's light squared bishop, but that has now been prevented.
Not anymore.
Yep.
The rook lines up against the white queen, so no e4 for now. You know, for a long, long time in the chess world, there's been the feeling that at the start of a match or the start of a tournament is when players feel maximum nerves, maximum tension.
Sure.
Because they're still not sort of found their rhythm into the game. And I think here at the Esports World Cup in Riyadh, all of that's been confirmed by our heart rate monitors. At the start of the day, both players over 100. Crazy things happening on the board. And as the match has progressed, you know, we see them come down. Arjun reach his more usual heart rate. We've seen Hikaru go under that 100. And that just shows how you settle into the battle.
In that case, I'm glad this is the third place match. Otherwise, in 2 days' time, they're both going to be sat here with a BPM of 50, just chilling on the sunbeds while playing these, I'm sure. So d5, still a long-term target. And the rooks have piled on the C file now. I'm guessing, but I don't know. Maybe you guys can tell me. I'm looking at ways to blockade the pawn on d5 because, you know, basics of chess, if you want to play against the isolated pawn, you sort of want to maybe play a knight e2 kind of mood. I'm guessing knight e4 straight away, if that happens, is preventing white from doing that.
Yeah, it looks like that would have been a very logical continuation from both sides. Instead, going the other way from Hikaru, it just feels like something's a bit off. I don't understand why he's put his rooks on the c file blockaded by the black knight, why he's put the white knight back on its starting square when it could have been going to fresher pastures. Black queen retreating. Apparently it's advantage Arjun right now, according to the eval bar. Very slight, but you can see why. Black's piece is now centralized.
When you're the side with the isolated queen spawn, you have to play for activity and attack. Now what Arjun set up, which was impossible before, is that jump that you were earlier talking about, knight e4. It's unstoppable now. With the black rook lined up against the white queen, the queen gone back to defend that knight. Knight e4 is almost a pre-move that you want. He might make it now or on the next move. But the moment that knight lands there, the other knight getting to e5, you can see the makings of some initiative in the position. A big threat, meanwhile, rook and queen lined up against the white queen. Watch out, d4 is Arjun's idea.
Yeah, d4, watch out. There might be knight d4 ideas as well in the near future. Hikaru is hating what's just happened. It was a bit of a shake of the head. He's telling himself to calm down. Look at that gesture. He's saying, you still got this. It's still roughly a level position. But white's advantage from earlier, big advantage of the bishop pair, of the better pawn structure, it has disappeared. White's knight is so badly misplaced right now, and black is ready, poised, all the black pieces centralized to blow open that center.
It does feel like we've lost maybe losing the thread a little bit. Those rooks on the C file targeting the knight that can't be moved, like you said, David. The knight going back to B1, its starting square, instead of developing elsewhere or going to E2. It's not necessarily that any of these are bad or losing moves. It's more that we've given Arjun Erigaisi the time he needs to put his own plan together. And it's like giving him a couple of moves to get his pieces into better positions. And now it feels like it's Hikaru responding to Arjun rather than the other way around.
100%. You know, like we said, two plans against the isolated queen's pawn. You either attack it or place a piece in front of it. Hikaru has not managed to make do of any of these plans in the last 10 moves or so. While Arjun, he's made all his pieces active. Knight e4 always incoming. That g5, hinting at g4 at the right spot. And, you know, we saw Hikaru tell himself to calm down earlier. And that's something that we've seen a storyline with Hikaru throughout in Riyadh. You know, he up-talks himself. And that's been fascinating. Yeah. Forces himself, wills himself to make a move. When things go wrong, he tells himself to take it easy, that, he's still got this, there's still everything to play for. I am the most resourceful player on the planet. When he's frustrated, you can see those head shakes. But the one sign to look out for every player is when Hikaru raises a finger. That's when you know that it's game over.
Even
when
better than the
he starts
head
twirling
bob.
his fingers, making them go round and round, telling chat, I got this, that's bad news. I haven't seen that happen this game so far.
Yeah, he hasn't got it yet, Hikaru, although the last few moves have been a bit better for him. The White Knight at least has developed. Black Knight now hitting the White Bishop. If the White Bishop moved, then Black would have been pushing forward in the center. Now things are getting spicy. The White Knight stepping back, allowing a doubling of the White Pawns. Arjun said no, he's trying to open up lines towards the White King instead. This is a race. If White gets the Knight on d4, stabilizes, White has the advantage. If Black gets the Knights in, gets the Black Queen in, White King might be in danger.
Clock's looking relatively equal as well. 4 minutes 37, playing just over 5 minutes at the moment, so less of a discrepancy than the previous game. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out too.
But this from a positional battle has become very tactical, and Hikaru stops the move Queen h4, which would have threatened a deadly checkmate on h2. He's very unhappy that he's had to do this. It weakens a lot of light squares around the White King. The Black Knight can reroute itself to that f3 square. A lot of ideas. The Queen can jump onto g5 and then target the h line. Queen g5, Queen h5. Also a plan. Arjun's on the attack.
Arjun on the attack. This last move given a question mark. It's not obvious what could have been better for White. It does prevent the Black Queen from landing on h4. White just needs 2 more moves. You need to get the White Queen to a better square. You need to get the White Knight into the center. But that is not easy to achieve. Okay, the Black Queen slides across. Black Rooks could jump up as well. Use the 6th rank to lift and slide towards the White King. Arjun, he's got to nail this with an attack though, because long term, White still slightly for choice with the isolated Queen's Pawn still living on this board.
If the majors come off the board, Hikaru Nakamura would be close to winning the endgame. But the endgame is a far, far way off right now. Arjun's getting ready to set up some checkmating ideas. Is he going to rush through with it? Queen h6 comes to mind right now. Also, always in the air is neutralizing that isolated Queen's Pawn with d4. So a break that needs to be timed well. Arjun first threatens a checkmate in 1.
That's what I was about to ask, because the Knight moving away from the e2 square, there we go, means that we open up to d4. An exchange of queens is going to happen first, though, and that's going to be... I actually don't know who that's a bigger sigh of relief for, because potential checkmating attacks were there on both sides of the board, but there's still plenty of life left in this game. A pair of Knights and 2 Rooks per player. Lots of dangers still around.
And White is the first to get to the 7th rank, where there are still a bunch of targets the White Rooks can infiltrate right now. We'll learn a lot about Hikaru's mindset over the next couple of moves. If he's happy to just try and trade off a set of Rooks, maybe trade off the Knights, it will end in a draw. But Hikaru could still go for it. Maybe he could trade off a set of Rooks in the process. He can go to the top of the board. He can go to the 7th rank. There's 2 White Rooks. He's going to move one of them. And still not over. There we go. He tries to trade off Black's more active Rook. And when the Black Knight retreats, he'll land on the 7th rank. This isn't over, despite the fact the eval bar says 0.0, despite the fact it's symmetrical. Hikaru does enjoy these positions.
It's going to be a bit of a grind right now, and especially because he's got the extra seconds. Who's happier with everything that's happened in the last few moves? With Arjun neutralizing that weakness at the center of the board, if you had asked this question 10 moves ago, it would definitely be Arjun. But the way the game was developing, with Arjun creating those ideas, Hikaru not looking happy on the camera, I think he's happy to see this endgame right now. He knows he can play it on forever. It's absolutely safe for White, and I think he likes what he's gotten.
Very similar time situation to a couple of games ago, where the time advantage is roughly 45 seconds right now, which is fine in the middle game, but once we get to the end game and we start seeing the players go below 2 minutes, starts to become pretty critical. And the player with more time here, Hikaru Nakamura.
Just want to point out, Hikaru's won a pawn. You cannot defend that pawn on a6. If the Black Rook had come up, there would have been a check, some knight forks, and there we go. Hikaru Nakamura, a pawn to the good. That's the first step.
Pawn. Black's threatening to come in with his own rook, but notice how the knight on h3 defends f2, the rook on a6 defends a2. So sure, you can infiltrate with your rook. If you're Arjun, he first stops any knight jumps on g5, creates a luft for his own king to come towards the center of the board. But you get into rook e2. That really doesn't help you because everything's defended for White.
Yep, everything held for now with White. The White Rook slides across. Hikaru trying to kick the Black Knight out, given a question mark. If Rooks disappear, it's going to be a clear win for white. The white pawns are going to be too strong on that left side, especially the white A pawn. So he needs to get rooks off, but Arjun cannot allow that.
Is the pawn given back now after knight c1? Because wherever the white rook goes, the knight can either capture a pawn, or the black rook can come in to help via e2 or a8, depending on how white responds. Is this just the pawn right back?
Does look like it. I'm very surprised Hikaru moved his rook away, as it's needed to defend anyway. Maybe he's hoping to deflect the black knight, the black rook, in order to get the white knight over to f4. He's actually going for the black b pawn instead, but this can be held. The black rook can defend that one.
You just slide it over, do a rook lift, defend your pawn, and the a2 pawn still under fire.
Oh, Hikaru reacts, just missing this last move, it appears. Giving back the advantage, the small advantage he had claimed. Okay, the pawn survives, but it won't survive much longer. It's about to get caught by the black rook, the black knight. The white knight, meanwhile, so offside.
That is the biggest problem for Hikaru right now. You know, you pick up that knight, put it somewhere in the center of the board, and Hikaru is close to winning. But that knight not coming to defend, yes, you can fall back with your rook, but then it'll be Arjun's knight that'll start chasing it around the board. I think this is about to neutralize, liquidate, and we might be getting an Armageddon sooner than we thought.
I think that looks like the most likely outcome. You can see the paths the black knight can take to try and support the pawn, not even going to go for that. We are just instantly grabbing it off the board, and now it is rook knight and 2 versus rook knight and 2. This is as equal as the position has been pretty much all game. There are still some fun things to do because white's knight is significantly more centralized, but that list of things you can do starting to dwindle by the second.
Yeah, the white knight wants to land either on e6 or h5, and the black g7 pawn is the target. But ultimately, that pawn can move, can maybe be just defended. And there we go, Arjun defends the other pawn, allowing the g-pawn to step forward. If the white knight moves, the black knight is out of its box. And this game fizzling towards a draw, 1.5 minutes. Do we expect Hikaru to try and hustle on time here? It's still risk-free for white, but ultimately not many resources left on the board.
I think he's going to play on for just a little bit more. You know, with Arjun 125, if Arjun takes a couple of seconds every move, that might not be ideal. And Arjun's still sort of struggling finding the right place for his rook and knight. Arjun's king feeling a little bit tied down to the white rook and knight. Something to play for. White's king has a clear path on the light squares to come forward and maybe even potentially create an attack. Hikaru there starts with a pawn move, tying down. Black's pawns there. An attack on the knight, retreats, some checks, watch out, knight e6 would win a pawn. I think Hikaru plays this on.
Yeah, Arjun's not liking this. Again, he doesn't like playing the role of defender in general, but especially when he's got no chances to win the game. And the white knight could still use some squares. The black rook currently can slide across the 5th rank, potentially to defend some stuff. But Hikaru, will he keep testing his opponent? It's a bullet game essentially for Arjun Erigaisi down at the 1 minute mark. He could well get this Hikaru. He's well within his rights to play on. It's not dead drawn yet.
All right, huge threat. The pawn on g7 about to fall. Will Arjun take a big decision? You can move it, but then you're really weakening your king and also leaving behind that f pawn. Hikaru is ready for the fight. He does target that f6 pawn, which is not easy to defend. Hikaru for the second time about to go up a pawn.
It's impossible to defend that pawn. Arjun suddenly leaned forward, panicking now. The black pieces should still be able to hold this thing together, but g5 so weak right now. There are going to be some checks. This game's going to be a long grind, and Hikaru starts with an extra 35 seconds as well. He's got the board position, he's got the clock position. This is Hikaru Nakamura's bread and butter. Is he going to get it though? Arjun needs to get the rooks off the board. He needs to get all the pieces off before he runs out of time.
Hikaru's won thousands and thousands of such positions. Technically a draw should be an easy hold for a player of Arjun's level, but put that mix of a 40-second on the clock, both clocks gone red, it's going to be a time scramble. The only one who can come on top, but you have to watch out, there are knights for both sides. But it's Hikaru who's feeling he's playing for 2 results here.
The white king is soon going to come in. The white knight is going to improve itself. Hikaru should not lose this. Watch out, there are knight forks. The king is coming. As soon as the checks dry up, the black king might be checked backwards. Hikaru, though, can he find safety? Where's he going to hide his king? The checks continue. He's moving further and further away from the area of the board he wants to be on. But this is all about the clock. 30 seconds versus 40 seconds now.
And Hikaru's such a beast when it comes to mouse skills right now. Definitely the better of these two players with more practice, has played hundreds of thousands of such games and come out on top 99% of the time. He does keep the pressure, attacks the rook, and look at that, Arjun's taking too long. He's down to about 20 seconds.
There are so many knight forks in the air. Hikaru, he's so good at avoiding those knight checks. The white king is coming. White's got the perfect setup. Black can barely move. The knight is fixed. The black rook is fixed. Hikaru's going to create those threats. 17 versus 26.
And look at Hikaru's eyes. They're darting all across the board. He's fully aware of every single square. He knows he can give a check at the right time, and he will do it. But he'll wait for Arjun to go down on the clock, and that was a blunder.
That was a blunder. The white king can step across now. The black rook is forced to give way, and there's going to be a pin. Arjun's defenses have been tipped over the edge. Fist pump from Hikaru Nakamura. He's getting closer. He's about to win the black knight. This game's about to end.
Any second now, Arjun will play on, but he will not save this. And look at that beautiful finish. He wins the rook king pawn ending. He's going to win this 6 seconds. He could have an R. Arjun could. It will be Hikaru Nakamura who gets that third place.
Hikaru Nakamura in a time scramble, doing what he does best, doing what he is famous for, what the entire world knows him to be the best in the world for. And he thrives under the pressure. He thrives under the pressure of that clock. And in the final game, takes the victory in this third place match.
Well deserved in the end. Hikaru, what a roller coaster he's been on in the last 24 hours alone. He made it through to the semi-finals, got knocked down by Magnus by the narrowest of margins in an Armageddon. He had warmed up, however, and in this clash for third place, 5 decisive games out of 6. Incredible. What a battle between these two fantastic warriors, and Hikaru Falcons coming out on top.
And look at the amount of respect shown here. There's no overriding emotion, no storming off, and nothing like that. They immediately go talk to each other about the games. They recognize what a high level, what a fantastic match that was. 5 decisive results out of 6. Honestly, really proves that this format is delivering what we want it to do. An absolutely incredible series of games.
Greatness recognizes greatness. Those two, the world-class players, and ultimately Tanya, it was the clock, but it is also masterful maneuvering from Hikaru Nakamura.
And beautiful mouse skill as well, right? Just the speed and the accuracy and finishing it off in style, eventually with this rook check. Give it up, go into a pawn endgame, and this is easy clap for Hikaru right there. Arjun resigning, Hikaru with the fist bump showing he's the boss.
Final position, definitely easy for Nakamura, but earlier on in that game, nay, earlier on in the match, anything but. 5 out of 6 decisive results and extremely high tension in every game. Hikaru Nakamura, though, for Team Falcons, walks away with the extra $30,000 in prize money for third place. Let's go ahead and hear from him on stage right now.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have our third place finisher in Hikaru Nakamura representing Team Falcons. I know it's not the result that you wanted. I know it's a consolation prize at the end of the day, but still, I would love to present to you the third place and podium finish in the chess tournament here at EWC and your bronze key. Ladies and gentlemen, one more time, your third place finisher representing Falcons, Hikaru Nakamura. Come on, make some noise. He's one of the best in the world, right here in Riyadh.
All right, Hikaru, you started these games a little bit rough at the beginning. Seems like you were kind of thinking about yesterday a little bit. You pulled it out at the end. You showed some passion. You were excited. Did these mean something to you?
I think it was a big wake-up call. I started off just really sluggish. I just wasn't there at all. I mean, I think yesterday played a role, not only because I lost, but it was a very long match. I didn't get back till midnight, so I felt tired. But when I lost the first game, I tried to get into the rhythm. But I think really the big moment was the third game when I was also losing, but I turned it around and won. And from there, I felt good, although the fifth game was, shall we say, a bit of an adventure too. And then finally in the sixth game, I got back to my roots and I was able to run my opponent out of time. And so it's a nice win, not the way I wanted it, but I'll take it.
Yeah, that you will. And, you know, I want to give you this opportunity. Is there anything that you want to say to the fans that are here cheering you on, cheering Falcons on in Riyadh in the S&B Arena?
Yeah, I think it's really nice to see all the fans here. You guys made a lot of noise for me, both last night as well as today's match, and hopefully you guys can make even more noise when Alireza plays the final later, and hopefully can beat Magnus. So show a lot of love and support, and thank you once again.
Thank you once again, Hikaru. Ladies and gentlemen, we still have our grand final on the line. But first, let's head on over to the studio and prepare for the final match of the day.